Okay, thank you for coming. We are reconvening after our closed session meeting. The reportable action taken in closed session was unanimous approval of the personnel summary. There's a copy in the back if you'd like to take a look. Can you hear me back there on the, can everybody hear? I always like to do a check at the very beginning. Okay, good. And if you can't hear any of us, please give us the high side. All right, so personnel summary was approved. Item number 7, approval of the agenda, including time limits. I believe we had one change on the agenda.
Yes, are you ready to approve the agenda?
Yes, we're on item 7, approval of agenda, including time limits.
All right, yes, on item 15, N as in Nancy, we would ask that the board pull that, and we'll bring it back. There was a link that was not the accurate link to 3512, so we'll adjust that to the correct link next time. And then on 15P as in Paul, the rationale reads AR 5146.6. It's a typo. It should be BP. All the attachments are correct and referred to the board policy, so it's just a change. So one change on 15P as in Paul, and then removing 15N as in Nancy, and we'll bring that back next time with the correct attachment.
And the change to 15P is just in the rationale section?
Yeah, first word from AR to BP. Just one instance of that, and everything else is accurate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I need a motion to approve the agenda, including time limits, with those two items noted.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye. I forgot to speak there, so, all right. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? The consent agenda are all items under number 16. Okay, I see. Do you have a question?
I don't see 14 on your slide.
Can you scroll down, Mary, to item 16, which is our consent agenda? These are typically items that don't require a lot of discussion. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
I think you're on it.
Keep going.
Wait.
Here we go.
Oh, that's 15. God, scared me. I thought we'd put that on.
They're the minutes and, okay. Last call for any public comment on the consent agenda. All right. Let's move on to item 9, approval of the consent agenda. This is a roll call vote because there's a resolution on it. Does any board member want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Yes, 16D. Well, it's an administrative kind of matter, so I guess if we have to talk about it at all, then it needs to be pulled, right?
Yeah.
So 16D, and give me just a second, sorry. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, here to 16D, which is the purchase orders over 7,500. Does any other board member have anything they want to pull? I had item 16J, which is the electrical project. I just wanted the whole board to hear the answers to the questions I asked staff. So I will pull J. So we're pulling 16D and J. Last call for pulling anything off the consent agenda. All right, then I need an approval, or a motion to approve the consent agenda with items 16D and 16J pulled.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Okay, Ms. Lundgren,
Aye.
Ms. Owens,
Aye.
Mr. Futterman,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
and Ms. Anderson.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Trustee reports, item number 10. Does anyone have anything to report?
I would just like to announce that Marin County School Boards Association will be having their annual dinner meeting in which where Jared Huffman will be speaking, and that's the 30th of August at Nicasio. I can't remember the name of the restaurant out there, but
Rancho Nicasio.
Rancho Nicasio, thank you. So I'd also like to hope that maybe our student trustees could attend. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I was just able, with several other board members, to attend the Schools Rules event at the Marin, I guess, County Fairgrounds is where it was, the Civic Center. It was a fabulous event, great community support for the schools and for our foundations throughout Marin County. It's very impressive to see the kind of support that the community provides to our students, and it's very much appreciated.
Any other comments from the trustees? Okay, great, thank you. Usually during the school year, we have more to report, so. Item number 11 is the board president report, and today I wanted to talk about the board self-evaluation. So we have a governance handbook that all of us signed, all trustees signed, and it's a guide for us, as the name indicates, for how to do our jobs as well as we can. It suggests that we have a regular board self-assessment, which this district, I don't believe, has ever done. So this is uncharted territory for us. A board self-evaluation demonstrates accountability to the community and the willingness of the governance team to strengthen and improve governance practices. So I contacted the California School Boards Association, which is what we trustees use as a resource tool, about how to administer a board self-evaluation, and this is what I learned. They will provide a survey that will be sent to the governance team, which is the 5 of us and Superintendent Yoshihara, on August 15th. And on August 15th, we will open up that survey. It's a 50-some-odd questions that have to do with professional governance standards. And we will have 2 weeks to complete that survey, which I think, despite the fact that it's a crazy time of year, we should be able to do that. So look for that email coming on August 15th, and please complete the survey. Then the California School Boards Association will tally the results from the survey and generate a report that will identify areas of strength and recommendations for improvement. Then in open session in September, we have 2 meetings in September, and during one of those meetings, we will talk about the report that's generated from the California School Boards Association based on our responses to the survey, and perhaps identify 1 to 2 goals for this fiscal year, 17-18, to strengthen our governance team's performance. So we're going to see how this goes. We feel it's a good move, and we've talked about this. We talked about this when we worked on our governance handbook, so this should not be a surprise. And I look forward to seeing how we do, and we'll talk about it in September. Okay, that's it for the board president's report. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Anderson. So although summer may be a time of rest for many, this is a very busy time for our maintenance, operations, and fiscal staff. During these few short weeks, they're busy getting portables in place for increased growth, paving our walkways to make them safer, putting in new fields over well-used ones, and working on roofing and HVAC to prepare for more hot days that we know are to come. In fiscal, they are preparing to put in place a new budget, closing out the books for 16-17 and getting all those retroactive payments to our well-deserved employees. Maintenance also has to prepare for more classrooms and keep more areas clean with limited staff. This is all done behind the scenes and without complaints. They've done excellent work thus far, and although graduation may have seemed just like yesterday, opening day will be here within 2 more board meetings. We continue our work with our communities, particularly Mill Valley, on our facilities work and discussion. Trustees Anderson and Lundgren had a productive meeting with representatives from the City of Mill Valley, Supervisor Sears' office, and staff on July 5th to talk about the work thus far, answer questions from the attendees, and talk about how to improve our relationship and communication going forward. This was followed up with an individual meeting with the Mill Valley City Manager and myself on July 12th, as we reaffirmed our commitment to work more with each other going forward. Although included in a memo, I did want to share that we plan to form a fiscal advisory/LCAP committee in this coming year. This is an ad hoc group composed of broad stakeholders to help us communicate our process of the budget throughout the year. We will invite them to listen and be able to ask questions on important decisions that our board will need to make. This will start in the coming fiscal year, and we encourage interested parties to apply. More information will be forthcoming. And lastly, our next board meeting will be in 3 weeks on August 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any board member have any questions about any of the board communications? I did ask Superintendent Yoshihara about the Fiscal Advisory Committee. That was one of the memos that we were given in this board communications segment of the agenda. I asked how members are selected, like from the city. I think there are only 2 listed there. If you could share with the board what you told me, that would be good.
So certainly from specific groups like TFT and CSEA, they will select the representative for those groups. For other groups, like site-based groups, the principal will have work with the sites in terms of giving us those choices. And lastly, other groups that are like at-large groups, we will use that in terms of looking for balance on a variety of different levels, everything from demographic balance to subject area balance to different job specification balances. With specific, for example, the city, one of our goals was to keep this a manageable group, because it can easily become very large if you want to include every representative from every constituent group. And so from the city, in speaking with Mill Valley, what he showed that they often do is they, as a group of city and town managers, meet monthly. And on occasion, they will be asked to participate in other meetings. And as a group, they will select an individual to represent them at those meetings. And Jim said he's done that on transportation meetings. Other people have represented on housing meetings. They said they'd be more than happy to represent that group on this particular meeting. In similar fashion, superintendents of Marin County, we have the same thing. Mary Jane creates a list for all of us on different groups, and we represent all superintendents when we're at that group, so that not every superintendent is there. So that's our goal. We'll work with the city managers group. Currently, Toy Garrett, I think is his name. I may have it backwards. Garrett Toy, I apologize. In San Anselmo is the chair of the city and town managers group. So we'll work with him in terms of selecting a designee for that for city and town managers. We'll kind of go through that for the process. We'll keep the board updated as that list evolves. Certainly Tara will be involved with a lot of the LCAP. There's a lot of LCAP components in there, like EL representative, special ed representative. Those are LCAP components, and she'll work with selecting those individuals as well. So we'll bring that together at a future board meeting and keep you updated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now is the time for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I see some of you are seasoned experts, and you know about this little yellow card that's in the back. This is not mandatory, but it really helps me manage public comment. We ask people who have something they want to talk about to fill this out, so we spell your name correctly for the minutes, and we know how to reach you if staff needs to follow up on whatever you have to share with us tonight. It is not mandatory. It is just a helpful tool for us. So I have already collected 5 items. Some of these items are related to items that are on the agenda. So these items will be discussed as those agenda items appear tonight. In any event, I have to read this paragraph under item 14 to comply with law. And here we go. Please see the attached communications to or from, I'm reading board communications. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and provides this time for members of the audience to address the board on any school-related matter not on this agenda. The board can take no action at this time. Each speaker is requested to identify themselves prior to addressing the board and will be heard for up to 3 minutes. The presiding officer of the board shall determine, based on time constraints of the board, whether sometime less than 3 minutes shall be allocated to individual speakers. We do have a timekeeper, Mr. Christensen, and he will be up here helping you to manage your time. He'll flash a card to let you know if you need to wrap things up. So at this time, I would invite anyone who'd like to talk to the board about items that are not on the agenda to approach the podium and tell us your name, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon. My name's Brad Widelock. I live at 235 Oak Manor Drive in Fairfax. And I'm here tonight because I'm concerned about the lack of maintenance at the Drake Pool. It appears that no one is monitoring the groups that rent the pool and how they treat the pool equipment. The pool is in need of new lane lines that cost approximately $7,000. These lines are frequently removed and replaced by middle school-aged children and not adults. I suggest that the task is best suited for adults who know how to do it and not for children. Currently, several lane lines are kept in place with bungee cords like this one. This actually came out of the Drake Pool. It was bright yellow, and you can see how long it's been in the pool. And these, of course, pose a risk to anyone who's using the pool. Also, it appears that the covers are not used at the Drake Pool. The result is a loss of energy and water and an increase in the need for pool chemicals. According to Board Policy 3511, and I quote here, "The Board of Trustees supports the reduction of energy and water use in the district in order to help conserve our society's natural resources and save money to support other district needs." Close quote. At Redwood, we have solar panels, and we're saving energy, and at Drake, we're giving it away. I want to thank David O'Connor, who's here tonight, for his prompt attention to my concerns, and I urge the board to follow its policies with regards to community relations and energy and water conservation. I'd also like to suggest that the district make it clear on its website who's in charge of pool maintenance and who's in charge of monitoring groups that use the pool. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Can you expand a little bit? You showed the bungee cord. You said
Sure.
that was holding the lane line.
That's correct.
And middle schoolers are changing the lane lines, as far as you understand? Is that what
My
you're saying?
understanding is there are groups that are using the pool, that rent the pool. My understanding is further that on your website, it says that for-profit groups pay twice the stated rate. And if you go into the board policies, you'll find that the group should be charged a rate which, if I can paraphrase here, requires the amount of amortization that it will cost to maintain said lane lines and other equipment in the district. So the system that holds the lane lines in place, that's about $75 for each lane line. The lines themselves are very expensive. So if the board chooses to replace the lane lines, which have not been replaced in quite some time, maintaining them would be a relatively simple thing, I believe, if it were done by adults, much like covering the pool. I think it's great that we've got the parking lot covered and we're generating energy, but why is no one covering the pool at Redwood?
Thank you.
Pardon me, at Drake.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, Superintendent Yoshihara, will you direct
Staff,
staff to contact?
My name is Brad.
I've got it right here, Mary.
B-R-A-D.
Yep, that's why we
They
have these.
send back my
white
checks
line-
for insufficient spelling, so if you want-
Yeah. I have it Widelock.
great.
Okay, and
That's
we've
me.
got your email right here,
Comcast,
so
you
we
got
will
it.
follow up with you. Thank you very much.
Y'all have a pleasant evening. And thanks again to David. Appreciate it.
I have two other yellow cards for non-agenda item topics. I don't know, which one of you wants to step forward first? I have Mimi and Laura Effel.
Thank you. I'm Laura Effel. I live in Larkspur. When I attended the June 13th board meeting here, you had a plan that on tonight's agenda would be approval or not of the facilities master plan. And I learned only a couple of days ago that that is no longer on tonight's agenda. And instead, there is an item on the agenda for approval of a consultant. And it seems to me that this is putting things backwards. I still don't think, as I said at that June 13th meeting, that the facilities master plan is appropriate. I think it requires significant changes. It's very expensive. And I don't think that the community has been alerted to this. My husband and I had a Marin Voice piece in the IJ a few days ago, which brought to, for the first time, brought to the attention of a lot of the taxpayers some of the issues involved in this facilities management plan. And now it's not even being discussed tonight. I think putting the consultant on the agenda before you've put the facilities master plan on the agenda appears to assume that you've approved the facilities master plan. I don't know if that's the case.
No.
But it does seem to be putting the cart before the horse. And that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to the, Ms. Ethel, did you get the community-wide email that was sent out on Friday about the update on facilities in the district?
No.
Okay, so,
We can include her on the list for future.
yeah, we sent out information about the facilities master plan. We're going to put you on that list. There are probably other people that are not on the list.
All right. Well, that might have made a difference in my comment tonight, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I appreciate you
Yep.
putting me on the list.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Yes.
Anyone who signs up to the board agenda on our website is on that list. So that's one way for people to get on that community.
Good point. Did you hear Dr. Topier? So on our website, you can sign up to be notified whenever our agenda is posted. And by doing so, you will also become part of this distribution list where you would have received this email from Dr. Yoshihara on Friday, which talked about the facilities master plan. So,
Can I
but
ask
we'll
another-
follow up. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
No.
but you're done. So since this is public comment, I know we're not supposed to deliberate because it's not an agendaized item, so I have a question. Will the agenda item that does discuss the political consultant also discuss the role of that political consultant in regards to the facilities master plan that would make it beneficial for anyone here that wants to stay for that?
To the extent that I can, yes.
So we can't say too much, and I don't know the answer
Yeah.
either, but we may get more information when that agenda item comes, and I think it's around 7 o'clock that it's supposed to be on the agenda. So,
Yeah, I think that's good. 7:10 is the estimate, but we'll see. It might be before then. Mimi, I think you're up next for public comment.
Amy Willer from Kentfield. Actually, that last little exchange was one of the things that I wanted to mention, particularly after last board meeting where we were here until 10:30 or something. Just hoping that while I know there are lots of different people who come for different things that they want to engage in, that maybe some thought be given to those that seem like they're attracting community interest to get towards the front of the agenda if possible, and tonight or in the future. I don't know if I just ate up my 3 minutes here, but I wanted to talk about the facilities master plan, which I think is a very important gatekeeping event, the acceptance or not of that. And I believe that the not addressing it tonight is kind of a little bit of a part of a situation of like good intentions but a somewhat flawed process. And there are three things I'd like to say about that. First of all, on inclusion. You have in your board communications packet tonight a letter from Supervisor Sears who says quite stridently that not all stakeholders were included and specifically complained about the lack of inclusion of the County of Marin, the City of Mill Valley. And I don't know whether Larkspur or San Anselmo were reached out to. I did put out an inquiry and didn't get a firm reply of yet. And then I would like to add that while I know that the ordinary public were always welcome to be part of at least some of the meetings that occurred, there wasn't actually any publicity through the IJ or the other fora that are there for people who aren't on your email list. So I think that's an unfortunate oversight of the process. Secondly, as far as the facilities master plan is concerned, I think that it was quite unfortunate that at the outset there wasn't a clear statement of what's the problem, what are the goals, what's the urgency. Are there dangerous structures? Are there flooding? Are there ADA problems? Is there an enrollment problem? I think that one of the initial premises was that there's an enrollment problem, but it goes up and it comes back down again. So I would encourage you not to move forward with the process until you cure the problems of the FMP. Go back and state your goals, meet with the city planners, hold maybe while that process is happening some public meetings, and then you can come back and move forward on hiring consultant, et cetera. I don't think you have any real time urgency other than perhaps targeting a certain ballot date for a bond measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you very much. Seeing none, we are going to move on to item 15, trustee considerations. The first item is a report on our goals. We like to touch on this at the beginning of every meeting to keep us focused on what we are here to do. Mary, do you have our goals?
I don't have them ready right now because she has something else.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Usually we put up on the screen what our 3 goals are in the district, so everyone is focused on the same thing. But
They're up on the agenda.
they're highlighted there, but we have a nice big purple screen usually.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight, what I wanted to share with the board is information about us launching what is known as an integrated app or an integrated application. And this is a program that works on any smart device, a phone or a tablet. The app is for parents, students, staff, or community members. And the idea is that this app will integrate a lot of different information from our district onto a tablet. So, for example, this app will allow parents and students to see any calendar information, any upcoming events. Parents and community members or students will be able to choose a school to follow or the whole district to follow. And they will be able to have information on attendance, on grades, on what their library, what they have checked out of the library, if they have overdue fees. They'll be able to look at their cafeteria balance and see if they have to add money to that. So the idea is to really bring a lot of information into one place. It'll also have news from the entire district. Mary, we have some screenshots of it. Could you? So this is a screenshot of what, right now our news on our website is a list of links that you have to click on, whereas on the app it comes up as these tiles and you can click on it and it'll open the story. And again, so someone could subscribe to the district news link, they could subscribe to one of the school site news links. Furthermore, when parents drill down into this app, they will have the ability to establish notifications that are based on thresholds that they can set. For example, I could say that I want to be notified the minute my student has 1 absence or 2 absences from any class. I want to be notified if my student's grade in any class drops below a certain percentage.
Oh, that's great.
And those are all individualized. So I can go in as a parent and set all of those thresholds myself. I want to know, if my child's cafeteria fund balance falls below $2.
Have you told the students this yet about this app?
They'll be informed. So the other piece of this is this app will also integrate with our mass notification system. So any email, text, or message that we send out via our mass notification system will also show up as a push notification on these apps. So if you have your push notifications turned on your app, you'll also get that communication on your app. That communication will also pop up on our website as a pop-up. So the idea is that we are streamlining our communication systems into this platform and onto this app as one way of increasing our communication both to and from. One other piece of this app that I personally think is really good is that it is a two-way communication, that there is what they call a tip line piece to the app. And Mary, can you pull that slide up? So what this allows us to do is it allows us to capture information from the public. And so it's called a tip line, and you can see there are a whole list of categories. It is not just bullying. It can be a positive thing. It can be just a request for information. It's a way for the public to reach out to us and solicit information or give us information. It can be either anonymous or not. It can include location. You can see they can add a photo. So what we like about it is not just being a static one-way piece of information, but that this app will allow us to also gather information from our community. So this will be launched in late August. We are currently working right now to get it built and to get trained on it. And so we're hoping that it'll be ready to go live for the first day of school.
Great.
So that's it.
Any comments? Questions?
What's it going to be called when I look for it on the App Store?
It is called, it actually comes up as the name of the school, and I think what we settled on was actually calling it TAM District. So it's, when you search it on the App Store, it comes up as actually TAM District app.
And which platforms will it run on?
It will run on pretty much any smart platform. It'll run on both, Android and Apple platforms. I don't know if any platforms that it doesn't run on at this point.
It's good. Anybody have any other questions?
Something's just, this out left field perhaps. Would anybody have any grounds for objecting that every child therefore assumes that every child will have a cell phone? Or a device?
Or a device. I mean, all of this information is also still going to be available via our website, so they can access it from school or from a laptop.
Will it appear in this format if we go to the TAM District website? Will we be able to click on something and it'll come up like that?
All of the information on this app will also be available on the websites. There's nothing that will be exclusively on the apps. The app actually pulls from our websites.
Okay.
And from our student information system. It just pulls from a bunch of places into one, whereas on our website, you would have to click into a couple of different locations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I usually ask for public comment. This is mostly an informational thing, so I'll just ask for public comment in case we have anybody who has something they want to say about this. Any public comment on this item? Okay, thank you, Dr. Topier. Now, item B is the day-to-day substitute teacher rate increase.
Good evening. As you are aware, day-to-day substitute compensation rates are governed by Administrative Regulation 4121. All of you have been parents and/or teachers in our school district, so you're aware that depending on the day, depending on the school site, bell schedules at our various sites are different. So the sub-compensation rate structure can be a bit confusing when you look at that administrative reg, because we have to account for traditional periods and we have to account for block periods. So it's as I say, it's a bit of a maze to wade through how we pay substitute teachers on a daily basis, depending on where they're working and how long they're working during a given day. We sat down as a group, myself and 4 of the 5 principal secretaries, to review how we compensate subs to make sure that we're consistent, given we have different schedules at different schools, and to discuss a potential rate increase. We believe we are paying subs in a consistent manner across our various schools, given the vagaries of the schedule, And in that the substitute teacher compensation rate hadn't been adjusted since 2008, we do believe an adjustment is warranted. We recommend, respectfully recommend, that the board consider a $10 rate increase per level of payment. And again, that's going to vary depending on what school, is it block day, is it a regular period day, but essentially $10 per substitute rate. And I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Lars, does that just comes out to an extra $10 at the end?
It is.
Okay,
It's
and
an
then by the
extra
time you
$10.
take the taxes out?
It equates to a 7% raise for substitute teachers.
It sounds big. You know, when you talk about it as 7%, sounds really
Yeah.
big, but then you look at it and
In reality, it's an extra $10. You're correct.
that's all.
It does put us in the top third of school districts in the county of Marin with regard to substitute teacher compensation rates. That is the recommendation, but it's certainly the board's decision as to, you know, what you choose to do.
Can you comment on the scheduling or how we, wasn't there an issue also about the block schedule, having somebody come all day versus part of the day?
Right. Some school districts choose to compensate substitute teachers in a half-day, full-day method. In other words, I'm making the numbers up, but if you're there from 8 to 12, that's a half-day. If you're there from 8 to 3:30, that would be considered a full day. And again, I'm making the numbers up, but that's essentially the way that some school districts choose to do it. We believe, and we talked to, as I say, 4 of the 5 principal secretaries, that the fairest way in our school district, given the vagaries of our various bell schedules, that, you know, some of our bell schedules are traditional days on a Friday, Monday with blocks in the middle, and they rotate through on a 1-week or 2-week basis. We feel the best way, the fairest way to do it is by the way AR 4121 lays out. 1 block, 2 block, 3 blocks, and then ancillary periods that may be attached to them, you know, well, we don't call them tutorials here, we call them something else.
No, that's helpful. Yeah, that was what I was trying to remember. I knew there was some issue around that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we did talk about that.
Other time, you know, at other meetings when Jess has been here, he's brought up that, you know, some teachers, you know, some subs come in for 1 or 2 periods and get paid almost nothing as a result. Is there a floor to how low the pay will go?
There is, and it's per the regulation. It's $60. It's a 2-period minimum. If the board would choose to approve the rate increase, it'd be $70. But right now, today, it's a $60 minimum.
That's essentially a half-day, really.
Well, 3 periods would be 80 currently.
Yeah.
And again, it varies whether you're talking about block or traditional schedule. But 60 would be the floor. It moves up to 80. Right now, the top end is 140, and there's a couple of other, you know, points in the middle of that, between the 60 and the 140.
That's, the 140 is current, or it's
140 is
proposed?
current.
Okay.
Yeah. Should the board choose to approve the rate increase, the top end would be 150.
I have a comment and a question. I really appreciate that you were inclusive of the principal secretaries and the superintendent's executive assistant in this process. 4 out of 5 principal secretaries were consulted. The 5th one, who was not there, did that person have input into this?
She was informed and certainly had the opportunity to. Sue Woods, no secrets. I mean, it was Sue Woods. She wasn't available that day, but I know that other ladies communicated with her.
And were all of the people involved in the process, was it pretty unanimous?
It was
People
unanimous. It
feel
was.
comfortable
And
with this?
we spent quite a bit of time. Mary was there and helped lead the discussion. We were there every bit of an hour, if not more. It was a very thorough conversation.
Anybody have any other questions for Lars before I open it up for public comment?
Well, I'd say I have a problem with the $60, you know, floor. I'd be happier at 75 at least.
The new floor would be 70 if this is approved, but again, the board can make whatever adjustments that you would feel are necessary.
Yeah, I think at least half of a full day is the minimum to get someone to come out to drive.
Okay, there's a comment. Any other comments? Discussion? Okay, then I'd like to open this up for public comment. I know we have Jess Richardson here, filled out a little yellow card.
Hello again. Nice to see you all, and I hope you're having a good summer. Other districts also have block periods and pay half days and full days. And if you go along with this recommendation, you'll still be at the bottom, and the problem will still persist. Subs will go to other districts, and it's not going to. It's not a solution. A solution is a half day for $85 and a full day. If you want subs to line up to work in your district, would be $160 for a full day. If you want to be like everyone else, you could pay $150, but no less than that. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem for the principals, the assistants, the teachers, the kids, and of course the substitute teachers, if you go with this recommendation. So my recommendation is to just give a little bit more. It's not much. It really isn't much. I can't run the figures in 3 minutes, but it's not much. And I really think you owe it to the substitute teachers. And you pay your teachers the most in all of Marin, and at the moment the least. And going this small increment above what is being suggested, you say it's the top third? Is that what you said, the top third? I don't know, I'd have to run the numbers, but from what I understand, you're still going to have a problem. And teachers are not going to like the decision, and the kids are still not going to get quality substitute teachers. And some of the stories I hear are really bad, and you get what you pay for. You know, it's a Tamalpais district. Just for a couple of bucks more. That's all we're asking. Okay, so I recommend half day, full day, half day 85, full day. If you're not going to go with 160, at least meet what the other districts pay, and that's 150. Most of the other good districts pay. Even the districts that don't have a lot of money. San Rafael pays 140. So at least 150. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear from the two teachers on the board, not to put you on the spot, but I'd love to get your opinion on if you have any other comment, I'm all ears.
Well, I only had a sub one day my entire career. But, I did sub for a year for Barbara very often. And in talking to other teachers, it's one thing that's really nice is to have a consistent sub who comes into your class, who knows the teacher and has a sense of the kids, has a sense of the boundaries of what's permissible in that class, what isn't permissible in that class. In getting a sub, there needs to be some real consistency. And if you don't have that consistency, then it's just bedlam. It really is. We have teachers out enough that having good subs makes a difference. Particularly for a teacher, if you have a sub in the classroom who can actually deliver the curriculum that you are going to deliver rather than doing busy work all period or showing a movie all period, which you have to do when you have when you don't know who's coming in. It makes a huge difference. Big difference.
Okay. I think that the level at which we are expecting our teachers and counselors to perform is, we've raised the bar and we're doing it. To keep that going and keep up your professional development, which requires many teachers to be out of the classroom or they're doing other professional development work, our classrooms are complicated, and we are depending on credentialed, experienced teachers to carry it. And when we don't have that level of staff, we got lots instruction is absent. Frequently, kids know who the subs are or that there's going to be a sub day. We lose kids don't come, and so on. This level of pay, I appreciate all the work that went into looking at it, but I wouldn't come out for this level of pay. You have to get in your car and go through all this traffic, and then you have to do a job that's fairly sophisticated for this level of pay. I'm sorry, it's too low. As proposed here.
I would add too that, currently, when we have a lot of teachers filling in because subs can't be had, they're giving up their prep period, and it's a surprise. They show up on Tuesday expecting to have a prep period, but they have to fill in that prep period somewhere else. Students are going to get shortchanged because the teacher is not going to be as prepared as the teacher had planned on being. And I think, that's really corrosive, when you have that on a regular basis, which it has been.
Yep. Thanks for asking.
I'm looking at the attachment that lists the pay schedule for other Marin school districts, and if approved at $150 per day and $70 or $75 for the minimum, we would be towards the top. If I'm reading this right.
I believe we're in the top one-third if we pass this.
So we would be competitive.
Can I add, as a reminder for the board, that this has been shared and discussed more than once among with the SUPs in the county. And there was an informal agreement that the top for daily rate without any long-term subbing be $150, and that there was concern among all the SUPs that as soon as a district moves above $150, then again there creates this sort of upward spiral of districts to figure out of whether they need to move that. So I think it's important to share that with Mary Jane and the group, that was an explicit conversation that was had around the 150. And that's, I think, in fairness, why you see many of them at 150. Again, not counting sort of long-term situations. So if we do something different, I just think you may have questions from your colleagues in other districts. So I feel that's important that I share that.
Thank you. And as proposed, this would increase our annual cost of substitute pay $37,425. Is that correct?
Correct. That includes all the associated costs with salary.
Could you say that again?
The additional cost, if this recommendation is approved, would be $37,425, and that includes associated costs with salaries, which is workers' compensation.
Yeah, Michael.
Just to make sure I understand, Lars, I'm looking at the memo that came with, not the chart, but
Right.
the memo that was accompanying the chart.
Yes.
So you've broken it down between what I'd say are traditional period days and block period days, right? So just to make sure I understand, for the traditional period days, a 3-period day, which is close to half a day, currently pays $80.
Yes.
And the proposal is to increase it to 90,
Correct.
right? So that's, all right. And for the full day, which would be either 6 or 7 periods, it would be move from 140 to 150.
Correct.
All right. And so for the block, if it were a block schedule, so again, 2 consecutive blocks is roughly equivalent to a half a day, as I understand it.
Correct.
And it would increase it again from $80 to $90. And then for the full day, it would be $150.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think that is competitive, and I think that staff has gone about this in a thoughtful way, and I'm prepared to accept staff's recommendation with respect to these increases.
Is there any more discussion, or would someone like to make a motion? We can discuss the motion if it's on the floor.
Is there any other feedback from the teachers, former teachers? I mean, because you'd mentioned something about not wanting to get in your car for this raise. Is that just, I mean, 90, like, I'm concerned about the half-day issue. So is,
Well, we can't, I mean, there's a lot of work that's gone into this and so on. I think the $85 for 2 blocks is still,
Can I just say something?
Yes.
2 blocks is $80 now, so it would be 90, right?
Yeah.
Right now, today, 2 blocks is $80. If this rate increase is approved, 2 blocks would be $90.
okay, thank you,
So that
that's
equates to,
different. Okay,
as
that's
Michael
where
said,
I was,
approximately
yeah.
half day for $90.
Okay, so we getting our numbers mixed up. Thank you.
2 blocks right now is $60.
No,
Uh-uh.
it's 80.
it says here.
Yes.
It's 80, it comes right out of the administrative regulation.
Okay.
I move that we adopt the recommendations of staff with respect to the substitute pay increases.
Is there a second? I second the motion. Is there discussion?
Okay, clarification. 2 blocks is going to get 90 on this proposal, correct? 2 blocks, 90,
Yes.
Yes.
and 150 for a full day?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're now discussing the motion. Is there any further discussion of this motion? Okay, so now we are ready to take a vote on this motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. That motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work on this.
You're welcome.
It's been a long process. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we are on to item C, discuss proposed Tamalpais adult school wage increase.
Good evening once again. This is an item for your, this is a discussion item, an information item. It's not an action item this evening. We are proposing that our adult school teachers who are not TFT, Tamalpais Federation of Teachers members, receive a 3% hourly wage increase. Currently, our adult school teachers are paid by the hour. There's 3 rates of compensation, $35 per hour, $37.50 per hour, and $40 per hour. And those rates will vary depending on how much you're working and so forth. And again, they're not union members. At the same time, they're valued members of our school community, and we would like to give them essentially the same raise that our other bargaining associations and classified management and other managers received as well. We're proposing a 3% increase. That equates to approximately $1 per category. So as I say, the current floor is $35 per hour. That would bump to $36 per hour, and so forth. The important thing to remember here with adult education is that it does not impact the general fund. So again, this is not an action item this evening, but if I put a memorandum together with the assistance of Corbett Elson, who's also here this evening, if you have any questions of Corbett, our adult school principal. And we ask that you consider this, and we would like to bring it back to you on August 8th with a recommendation for approval. But we bring it before you tonight for your consideration and discussion.
Are there any questions for Lars? Okay, this seems pretty straightforward. Now's the time for public comment on this. It's not an action item, but we're happy to hear any public comment on this item if there is any. Corey?
Just need some clarification on this. I understand that we're trying to align with the 3% increase that everyone in the district got, but my question is, was the original pay from which that 3% begins from and goes up a competitive rate? It seems like $35 an hour for a teacher is an awful low hourly rate. And I never want to see teachers in any category, be it adult ed or whatever program, being paid less than what they're worth. And it seems to me that at $35 an hour, with this proposal, that would go to $36. I question whether that is a reasonable hourly rate for any teacher in our district. So my question is, Is that a competitive, across-the-board, typical rate for a teacher in an adult ed program, or do we even know that information? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff will follow up.
Staff will follow up, yep,
For
and
next time.
let us know, too. Is there any other public comment on this? It is a discussion-only item. So thank you, and we will look forward to hearing the answer to that question that was just posed and seeing it back on the agenda on August 8th. Okay, item D, approve reinstatement of adult school assistant directors' positions.
Thank you, members of the board. This is an item that was introduced last time as discussion, this time as action. This relates to positions that existed with the adult school prior to the realignment under the governor with LCFF funding. And as you know, that the adult ed went way down in terms of dollars, essentially became a flexible program under Tier 3. That has now been changed to sort of this consortium model of which the district is a recipient of a fair amount of money from that. We're one of the few remaining strong adult ed programs in the area, us and College of Marin. And as a result of that, we offer quite a robust sampling of programs. As such, it has grown back in its numbers and offerings, and as such, there's been a request by, again, the adult school principal to add these 2.7 positions to the district, fully funded by within adult education. The staff is fully aware that this, like as in the past, should it change, staffing would be reduced and or augmented based upon future funding sources. So they are clear on that. I'm presenting this because this is a management position and I represent management here tonight. But certainly if there are programmatic questions, Corbett is here as well to be able to assist with questions. So again, this was the last time. Bring it forward again if there are questions. Otherwise, I would ask that the board approve these two reinstatement of positions for adult education.
Thank you. Any questions? Michael?
Yeah, so with respect to adult ed, I mean, you indicated, David, in your presentation that if funding for adult ed were to decrease, then, you know, potentially these positions, we'd no longer be able to offer these positions.
Correct.
So what are the restrictions that we operate under, right, with respect to regular, for example, staff, certificated staff in the district, you know, which collectively bargained and bumping rights and all those other kinds of things. To what extent do those apply at the adult ed level, if at all?
Sure. Well, for the staff, which you just approved, those are hourly employees. And so those basically are contracted for a period of time. So they aren't represented by labor or anything to that effect. These are management positions.
Meaning though, that...
Meaning that when funding goes down, then we reduce the amount of instructors we hire. So essentially it's you know, demand and what we can afford.
Okay.
Certainly they have due process rights with regards to notification that, you know, the course is ending, we're not offering it again. Management, this being a management position, is similar, but management is, as you know, more at-will employees. And so there's even less protections. But again, in working with Corbett, this is a staff that is well aware of the tenuousness of their positions over time, and he says they've lived through this and certainly are aware that that could change.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I would now entertain a motion to approve reinstatement of adult school assistant directors' positions. Anybody?
So moved.
Second.
Is there okay, any discussion? We ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. That motion carried.
Thank you. Adult Ed thanks you as well. Thank you, Corbett, for coming.
Thank you. Item E, Mr. Menyon, approve response to grand jury report on the budget squeeze.
Yes, thank you, members of the board. I'll have Mr. Mannion up shortly. As you guys are familiar, we have a number of grand jury reports. You're becoming quite accustomed and adept at reading these and asking questions about them. So the typical process is they submit the report. There's a window to respond by in their findings. We work with the county office to ensure consistency across all the districts. They're very nice. They have counsel and provide a template for us, and we're able to modify that template to our local needs. And so this one here is in particular to pensions. As we all know, the board has talked a lot about pensions, and certainly the grand jury has an interest in pensions. And so I'll let Daniel come up and speak to this fiscally, and then we'll be happy to answer questions. But the board would need to adopt this. We then forward this to the county office, and then subsequently to the grand jury. So thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Ishihara. And as you know, Tamalpais is one of 2 districts in Marin County that actually have what they call irrevocable trust fund. And we actually contribute to that every year. It's roughly about $500,000. And that capture the cost, the pension cost for current retirees and future retirees. We actually have a consultant that does the actuarial report for us. So this is actually in response to the grand jury report. This district is actually doing something about the retirees and current employees and retiree. And so there were 3 questions that we're responding to. And the first question has, and I don't know if I should go into the detail. Would you like for me to go into the detail?
She can just post it.
Oh, okay, if you can post it. So these are our responses to the question. The first one has to do with multi-year projection of a financial statement. They want to do 5 years projection. And I know that we talked about it in one of our meetings, and that's something that's on my plate. So I'm going to develop, we already have a multi-year projection in the budget. I'm going to extend it 5 years. So I'm going to have that ready for the August 22nd board meeting. So we're going to meet the R3. That's when we're going to meet that requirement. The second question is, we already done that. They want 10 years of audited financial statement. We already have 12 instead of 10, and those are available on our website. And if you click on it, there's a page you can go to that actually disclose information on GASB standard 67 and 68. The most complicated one, and I discussed it with the superintendent, is this item. And what they're asking about is they want to introduce a defined contribution program. And they want staff to look into that. Well, that's a little bit complicated. That's a can of worms because there are fees and penalties associated with that, and we currently have Pension Reform Act on the table that might make it difficult. So what the superintendent recommended is that there might be some laws that have to be introduced for this. So those are the 3 responses, and I'm going to pause to see if there are questions. We're happy to answer those.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, what is our unfunded liability in dollar amounts?
The actuary annual contribution is $500,000, and we contribute to that. We do the contribution on a monthly basis, and that's in the budget.
Is that a 30-year time?
Yes, it's 30 years. We've gone 7 years, and right now we have about $3 million in the pot, to $3 million in assets that we've contributed.
Any other questions on this item? Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? Yes, please. We've got 3 minutes. Laura.
I'm Laura Effel again. As a former member of the grand jury, I just want to point out that when you say this recommendation requires further analysis, you have a time limit for getting back to the grand jury with that further analysis. And I would urge you to keep in mind what those requirements are. I think it's 6 months, but it would actually be helpful if you put in, it requires further analysis and we'll report back in 6 months, or whatever you think is appropriate. But I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mimi Willard. With respect to the last comment about defined contributions, moving to a defined contribution plan and that laws might need to be introduced in order to do that, I'm definitely sympathetic with that problem. And I'm also sympathetic with and concerned about the burden on the district of AB 1469, which is going to force you to use more and more of your, in effect, taking out of the operating budget to cure the problem that's associated with the defined benefit plans now in place. And so I'm just stepping up here to encourage the district to consider getting together with some other districts and jurisdictions within Marin and maybe think about going to talk with our state legislators about the need to give serious thought to pension reform or modification or change, because it's just going to kill the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I have a couple of questions about the pensions. First
Can
of
you
all,
please
and I'm
state your
sorry,
name?
I'm Benedetto Chico. I'm a former parent, temporarily. I'm sorry, coming back later. I did not understand, I cannot read well, if the gentleman who made the presentation is a consultant to the district or an employee of the district?
Employee.
Okay, just for me
Yep.
to clarify. And then the 500,000 a year, it's every year? Or, I mean, the 500 unfunded liability, it is a yearly unfunded amount, or it's a set amount that we're trying to pay back over, I think you said, a certain number of years? I'm sorry, is it okay? I'll ask the question and then maybe I have another question.
I think
And then that money is coming out from the general fund, or it has been allocated specifically for the unfunded liability? And then the third one is related to the lady who was part of the grand jury, that the grand jury is constantly complaining about the district and agencies never kind of following up in what they're saying. So I strongly suggest, as she said, to go back and see, to clarify our situation. But the biggest concern I have is about the 500,000 and what percentage, and if it's coming from the general funding, and what percentage of that would be out of general funding. Thank you.
Okay. So here, public comment, we're not supposed to engage with the public. I think he had some clarifying questions that I believe can be answered quickly. Dr. Yoshihara, can you help me on this one?
Yeah, thank you very
Yeah.
much. The first thing is that the funds come out of the general fund, and that's part of, we budget for that every year, the $500,000. And we do have an actuarial report, and I have a copy right here, and I can give you a copy, for your record. And it's easy to follow, and I have it available for that.
Okay. And Mr. Chico, do we have your contact information?
But again, it's not clear to me, is every year 500,000?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir, that's every year, yes. Mhm.
Do you want to follow up just to clarify? You're good? Okay. Thank you. No, more public comment. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tatiana, and this is a question. Since we're talking about the funding, what is our current liability, and do we have liability projections? Talking about a 5-year plan, does that include our pension liabilities? Is that clearly stated, my question?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
What is our current liability and
Projected liability.
projected liability? I can't answer that right now myself, but staff will get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give us your contact information, Tatiana? Would you mind filling out one of these cards?
I don't mind, and yes, I can.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this item. Did I get that wrong?
I move that the board accept the district response to the grand jury report on the budget squeeze.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we will take a look at the timelines. Again, we use county template with regards to that, and I'll go back and take a look if it's feasible.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, we are on to item F, discussion and approval of a capital campaign strategist.
Thank you, members of the board. At the last meeting, I brought forward an item for discussion as it relates to next steps around this consideration of whether to go out for a bond, parcel tax, the order of which to do it, so on and so forth. There was a number of questions and a number of different scenarios that the board does need to consider and weigh in on. And there was, at that time, I included 3 firms for the board to consider. They had asked me to take a look at those and develop some criteria of which to make a recommendation. And so I include there in summary form the criteria of which I use. I actually did a number of reference checks and communicated with each of those firms for additional information and used those criteria to bring forward the recommendation here tonight. Unfortunately, I don't have the contract ready. I'm working with one of your trustees with clarifying some questions as it relates to the contract, and if all works well, we hope to bring that in August for the board's consideration. Nonetheless, I believe I do have a representative here tonight. Is Jill here tonight? Thank you. So I'm going to introduce Jill here briefly. She's principal, I think, with the firm, but she'll introduce herself. She has a short PowerPoint, which you have a copy of up there. We're happy to make that available to the public with regards to just some short information of what they will do, and be happy to answer questions around their services. So again, the idea is to get approval for them tonight, and then we'll certainly bring the contract pending all questions get answered at the August meeting. So Jill, please, welcome. Jill Galoob, I think. Nice to meet you.
And I just have a question about the PowerPoint that the board has. Are there copies in the back?
Yeah, there were some, and there is one in the binder.
It's not.
Okay.
We'll include it with minutes.
Well,
Can we go with the minutes? Yeah, we'll include the minutes.
the minutes, there's a little delay on the minutes, so the minutes won't be immediately available. I'm just wondering if the public wants this information. Yeah, so if you would like a hard copy of this before the minutes come out, please contact Mary O'Leary, and she will get you a hard copy of this. I'm sorry we don't have copies for everyone at the moment. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
It's nice to meet you all. Spent some time watching your last meeting, so I feel like I know you a little better than you might know me. But I just wanted to put together, obviously we put in a proposal. We're really excited to be here. I wanted to, based off of what you discussed last time, put together our thoughts on what we think we can do for you and how we think we can help the process that you're going under as you consider potentially going to the ballot with either a parcel tax or a bond measure. So I'll go through that quickly, and then I can take as many questions as you like or discuss other things that aren't included in here. So just generally, we put this in our proposals. You've seen this before, but as you're thinking about moving forward, we would work with you to think about the things that make a revenue measure successful, whether it be a bond measure or a parcel tax. And the first is obviously that it be good public policy, that the parcel tax or the bond measure you put together is is a good plan for the district. It meets the district's needs. I know you've done a lot of work on that side of it already, but we would come in and continue to work with you on that. And then creating a ballot measure that voters will support. I mean, and you talked about that a bit at your meeting last week, and I'll walk through some of the ways that we would do that, but it's, we need to put something on the ballot that voters are going to vote for. Otherwise, it's a lot of time wasted for the district and for the voters. Picking the right election date. This is a critical question. We have a number of opportunities. And so one of the things that we would help you work through is what election opportunities there are and what's the best strategy and which ballot to go on. Engaging, organizing, and motivating the core school family. I mean, without the support of the teachers and the parents and the families in the district, you can't win a ballot measure, particularly a 2/3 ballot measure. So we can work with the district to engage the school family, the teachers, and parents. Again, with a 2/3 measure, I mean, you need near unanimous support of community groups and opinion leaders. It's why we recommend a lot of public outreach and engagement and stakeholder engagement, and then neutralizing opposition so you have a clear channel of communication. And then lastly, conducting and creating an aggressive campaign that's, once the measure's on the ballot.
Before you go to the next slide, can I just give you a little bit of information? At least I can speak for myself. I really appreciate you doing this, and it's going to be very helpful because we haven't seen what your scope of work is and what you'll be doing. But just to clarify some of the feedback we've received, for instance, I thought it was put very well by somebody that does polling, and rather than look at it in terms of, gee, what can we sell to the public? What will they buy? Really what we're doing is, by doing a poll, would be to find out what do they value? What are they willing to spend money on? What do they want to? How much? And then we take that information and we look at what our needs are and we see where the overlap. And I just want to be careful as we move forward because we've heard from a lot of community members, they're very alarmed by the draft facilities master plan and what a large value it is. And so as we move forward, if we could keep that in mind, that we're really here to be, also, we want to know how much they will, what they're interested in spending money on. So we're kind of at the beginning stages. So I just wanted to clarify that, and we will probably hear from some of those people after you're speaking.
I'm sure.
And I want to hear from them. So I just want you to keep that in mind, and it helps us put that in that framework. So thank you.
Yeah, and you'll see that as part of our work plan. I mean, I think what we do and what we do well is help you put together a program that gets you to communicate with the community and hear from the community. And that doesn't have to just be a public opinion poll, though that's the easiest and most efficient way to do it. Mm-hmm. What we do is we can help you build a public engagement program that's sort of broader than just a public opinion poll. So that's some of the stuff that we put in here, but stakeholder outreach, so reaching out to community groups, reaching out to parent groups, teacher groups, groups that are not, their kids are not in the school, and finding out what they want from the school district and how, what value the school district brings to them. So I agree with you, and I think I want to be clear that I think we're here to help you navigate the process without a conclusion of what the end result is. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to come in here and say, you should put a bond measure on this ballot, a personal tax on this ballot, and it should be this amount, and that's it. I mean, it goes back to, actually what's on the first slide, which is it has to be good public policy, and it has to be something the voters are going to support. Mm-hmm. And I think what we do is we help you navigate that process.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Sure. So I put it into just 3 buckets of work, beginning with sort of working with you to create and manage a strategy for this process. So analyzing the financial situation, again, as I said earlier, working with you to put together good public policy, and then developing a revenue plan that will maximize support, so that finds the most agreement with voters. The way we do that is a couple of different things. Obviously, working with a public opinion research firm to do a phone or online or mail survey, conducting some initial stakeholder outreach, as I said before, to people in the community who are engaged in the issue and have concerns, and finding out what they are. We would also do an electoral analysis of the district, so where looking at past revenue measures that have overlapped the district or were put up by the district and how they performed on different elections, and then reviewing the ballot options. So again, just as a point of information, so the district, so you, the board, know what's the difference between going up in a June election versus a November election versus a mail-in only election as far as turnout, cost. So you have all the information going forward so you can make the best decision. And then working with you to develop a public outreach and engagement program. So as I said, that's sort of a broader outreach program. We've done a number of different public outreach programs from small to large. Depends on the district, it depends on what the board wants to do and how robust of a program, but we would work with you to do a public outreach program. So maybe that's a number of town hall meetings or a telephone town hall meeting or an online survey or some digital advertising where the district can say, hey, this is what we're thinking, this is what our financial picture is, like what do you think we should do? What do you think, what do you want from the school district? And how do you want us to proceed when it comes to issues like this? Do you think it's more important that we build facilities or that we support, we hire teachers? And so just it's another layer on top of the public opinion research. And then through this, we would find new audiences, so people who haven't really engaged in the school district before, but then also maximize communication in the school family. So again, just using multiple channels to find out from people what they want to see for the school district's future and how that affects a potential revenue measure. And then lastly, if you decide to move ahead, we would help you place a measure on the ballot using all the information we've gotten back to develop the ballot language, the measure itself, the length, the amount, the escalator. We would basically get you up to the point where you put it on the ballot, and then we can continue to work with you after that to, once the district puts a measure on the ballot, they can't advocate for it, but you can certainly do public information. So that's basically, very quickly, a broad scope of what we do. To provide more information, here's a list of different things that could be included in a public outreach program. We've done combinations of all of these, and I think some of these make more sense for your district than others. Town hall meetings, phone survey, online survey, digital outreach, direct mail to drive people mostly to the meetings. Telephone town hall meetings, we've had a lot of success doing those recently. Obviously going to community groups that exist and making in-person presentations, reaching out to key stakeholders in the community, whether they're likely to be for or against it, to engage them in the process, and then earned media.
What's earned media?
Earned media, press.
Okay.
Using the local newspapers to spread the word.
I'm having trouble knowing what comes first. Like you said, for instance, you said public meetings to get engaged, and for people that are for it and against.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that says me we're already going to a meeting with something or presenting for them to be for or against. And then earlier, I think on slide 2, you talked about the community outreach in order to get feedback. So we have a draft FMP, and do we go to the community with the further down the road once we've prioritized, at least for the district, what we think our top priorities are, whether it's fixing the roofs or whatever it is, and then take that you would help us take that to the public and see if they agree with that, and then the next step is go to them and say, here's what we've decided. I mean, I'm trying to understand the steps that you're suggesting.
It's a little bit of both, and so I apologize if that's confusing, but I think the district needs to get to a place where you can say, this is what we think is the best policy, and these are some of the options within that, and we can take that, we can work with you to take that to the community and say, these are some of the things the district is thinking about. What do you think about it? Do you think a bond measure is important? Do you think these specific things within a bond measure are important? Do you think a parcel tax is important? And do you think these things within it? And we would learn that through public opinion polling and then the public outreach process. We would come back to you at the end of that and say, here's what we learned through that process. We learned that the community wants A over B, or they don't want C at all. And then we would work with you to basically finalize a decision, basically that would be your go, no go, we would call it. We would say, this is what we think the community wants and would support, and it's kind of, the district makes a decision about whether that is something that they think is good public policy as well, and then we work with you to get it on the ballot.
Okay,
Is that
that's
less
helpful. Yeah, those steps are helpful.
So, just for clarity, what I think would be the immediate next steps are obviously to execute a contract We do regular meetings. This is not something where we're going to go off and put together a plan and give it to you and never see you again. We want to work with you on an ongoing basis, and obviously the board meetings might not be the best place for that, but working with whichever subset of staff or board, develop a detailed timeline for key decision points, looking at some of the upcoming ballots. We would immediately do background research and electoral analysis, what I talked about earlier. So what does each ballot mean as far as cost to the district, turnout, and sort of what our options are. That obviously determines our timeline. And then we would present, we would come back to you with sort of a more detailed plan for what we think some of the best options are, and then how we would go about testing that with the public. That's it. I don't know.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead, Barbara.
Given the slides here, will we be able to see a breakdown of our costs then, or what you will be charging for all these discrete activities? That's one question. Second question is, based on, I think it was slide 3, planning for success, I thought I heard you say that effectively we'd have to also hire somebody else in this process. Under the section of public opinion, it was public opinion research? Is there somebody else we'll have to hire to do the phone, the actual outreach part?
So all the things that I've outlined, we do everything except the public opinion research. With a firm like Godby would do that. So we would.
So we do.
Right.
Have to go
So
out
you
to
need
another
to
firm.
hire a public opinion research
Okay.
firm. That is not something we do. Instead, we sort of guide you through the process, and we work with the pollster to make sure that the poll meets your needs.
Okay, so just ballpark.
Yeah.
We hired you to do all of this. What numbers are we looking at in terms of cost?
So the proposal we put together is $5,000 a month for a minimum of
$5,000 a month.
A month, right. For a minimum of 6 months, I believe we did, is that what we said. So we think that gets you to the point of either, you've decided you're not going to go, or we've picked a ballot, or, and then we can make a decision from there. But that's sort of the minimum we would need to conduct all of this work.
Okay, and I have a comment to make about language. Number 6 on the first slide. One of the remarks that I hear people saying is that we spend all this money and we're manipulating the public. And words like neutralizing opposition is highly manipulative. And I think it questions what we're really trying to do here, and it suggests we're trying to, deceive people to some extent. And the language in number 6, maybe it's just a semantic for me, but I think one of the concerns is that this is your business. You're going to get paid whether all of this works out or not if we agree to work with you. And I think taxpayers have the right to have this sense of clear decision-making, and we don't want to appear as though we're trying to get away with anything, because obviously some of the issues that we've been addressing even this evening have simply I don't mean to diminish it, the communication cycle of this information. There are some gaps so that people are hearing one thing and then we make a decision on a next meeting. And that implies to people that we're not being upfront and transparent. And we don't, certainly, I can speak for myself, and we're trying very hard to be as transparent as we can be, given the information that we have. So my objection is to that kind of rhetorical style in number 6.
Yeah, that's obviously not what's intended. We're not suggesting
Right.
that we have behind-the-scenes conversations and shush people up. In fact, what we're suggesting is that we engage with people who are either against a measure or have concerns about a measure, and that's the way that you would neutralize opposition, which is to take their concerns and to make them part of what you decide to move ahead with or not move ahead with.
I'm glad for clarification on that. When I read neutralize opposition, I had more dangerous images in my head. So I don't know if, just for future, if we could I like what you said a lot better than neutralizing people.
Yes, we're not neutralizing it. And, I mean, I want to be clear that what we're proposing, what we normally would propose to do in a situation like this is to do a sort of a very large level of public engagement. We want people in the community to feel like you asked them for their opinion and you contacted them and you communicated with them, and that even if they decide not to participate or not to come to a meeting, that they were asked for their opinion, but even better that they come to a meeting, that they participate, that they share their concerns, and that the board has actual feedback from the community they can use going in deciding how to move forward.
We've heard from many stakeholders already, and we keep talking about inclusivity and, wanting people to feel like their voices are heard, regardless of what their opinions are. We want them to feel like we are listening to them, and so I appreciate this element of your campaign strategy. The more voices, the better, and the more diverse, the better, too.
Yeah, we don't want to neutralize the opposition. We want to win the opposition over.
Right.
Exactly. So we're going farther than that. But yeah, the term neutralize. I'm an Army veteran, and I think the term we used was neutralize with extreme prejudice. It had a homicidal context. There are a lot of ex-GIs out there in the voting world. I think we can use better language.
Understood. Absolutely. I won't throw anybody else under the bus, but it wasn't my language.
Are there any other questions from the board at this point?
Who would be our primary point of contact?
Me. Mark says hi, by the way.
Hello to Mark.
Any other questions before public comment? Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
It's Jill, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now is the time for public comment. I have at least one yellow card for this agenda item. We do have Mr. Christensen to help with time management. Mimi, your name is on here.
So my first comment is that this PowerPoint presentation was not in the agenda packet, which is unfortunate, and also not in the agenda packet, and I think really should be something that means that you shouldn't vote tonight, is a staff report with the criteria, the comparisons against the other consultants, and a general analysis by staff of why we have to hire a consultant now and why this one. And I don't think it would be responsible for you to vote without that. That said, I'm also concerned about an inertial process here. You know, I've been talking about this for months. And I just feel like you're on this slippery slope here. So we had the FMP contract that was signed a month before the November election, at which the Kentfield District parcel tax failed and Mill Valley just squeaked through. And so I've felt all along that there needs to be kind of a pulling back to think about what are we trying to do here? What's the scale of it, and is it disproportionate to the district? Meanwhile, there is a problem with the FMP. It's too big, and there's some process issues that have been expressed by Mill Valley and Marin County. And I don't think the solution is to skip over all that by not addressing whether you're going to accept the FMP now, and to go ahead and hire a consultant to take you along to the next stage. But rather, I think you need to go back and look again at the FMP and whether you've got the right stuff in it and the right size and the right inclusion of people in the community before you spend more money on a strategist, and then that will take you one step further down the slippery slope to the polling person. And then I just think the whole thing is premature. One last comment, seeing as I haven't seen anything from Lars yet.
My phone and stuff.
Oh, good. Thank you, Lars. Regarding where we get to in the next step of this, which is going to be this polling consultant if you go forward, just be thoughtful about that. Godby is the standard choice around here. They were engaged by TAM, Transportation Authority of Marin, and the structure of the survey was essentially, if we put the language such and so, or promised you such and so, would you vote yes? And if the person says no, then it's, well, what if we ask this, would you vote yes? And so it becomes kind of a fishing expedition aimed towards the end goal of getting the money. And I think you need to take the leadership up front to figure out what you want in your project and what's really important there and make the case for it, rather than starting with how much money do we want and working backwards. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Benedetto Chico. I've been out here. This is my 9th year coming to meetings. First of all, I'm glad to know I don't need a bodyguard next time I come, because I'm the one of the opposition, so good to know. However, I feel that verb, neutralize, it's a Freudian slip. That's what you mean. This is pure Tammany Hall politics. This is a solution in search of a problem. You need to raise that money. So I hope all of you think this really a lot. If you want transparency and communication, why do you have a vote on July 18 and then in August when everybody is in Tahoe or Maui and back and forth? You really want to show you want communication with the constituents? Postpone the vote to September, October, when more people can come and know about it. That would be a first step to show that you mean transparency. And I believe we cannot really have a bond about teachers, as the lady of the presentation said it. I believe we can have bonds only about construction projects. Because if you had a bond for teachers, I would be here cheerleading for you. That's the only money we got to spend, is about teachers. School is about teachers. It's not about facilities. I printed out your presentation, I think 250 pages. I am in the hotel business. I thought was Ritz-Carlton trying to raise money for some project. And we really lost our mind completely that every single fancy idea from anybody in the community, we got to spend money on that. We got $500,000 in the hole every year, and we spend money on consultants who want to neutralize the opposition. I mean, what's going on here? What's going on? And we really lost it completely. This is not even anymore the marine bubble. This is the marine outer galaxy, a black hole. Please think. Then transparency. I'm still trying to get the data from the surveys you did years ago about new tech, never got a single piece of data. So I hope the board this time will clarify, if you really go ahead with this project, who owns the data of the survey? Are we going to be able to actually see what the citizens say about it, or we got to be constantly lied by somebody on that side of the desk? We never really know what people tell you. So please, be reasonable and respect. And finally, as a local business owner, don't tell us it's only $350 per household. To me, as a local business, it is $350 million that you'll take away from the local community that will be spent somewhere else. So please, be reasonable and stop channeling the ideas from Kimbrell. She's out. Please, she started this. And we know what she did to this district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone left an electronic device, maybe they want to not. Oh, it's yours? Okay, okay. Again, Tatiana, citizen, homeowner in Mill Valley. First, I just want to express my appreciation for your sensitivity to the word neutralize. I had quite a similar visceral reaction to it, and more along the military definition of what neutralize is. Which is particularly sensitive because I feel that my personal financial budget has already been neutralized by the excessive parcel tax and so on, and I don't have any illusion that I'm going to dissuade you from moving forward and getting more money. I'm here to ask you to please do it thoughtfully. I just heard of this, so I feel like I'm coming a little late to the party. I haven't loaded a lot from the website. I haven't read the 250 pages, But I have looked at my personal history, and I have already invested over $20,000 in Marin schools, and I don't see any return on that investment. And I ask you, would you continue investing good money when you've not received, when you've not realized an ROI on that investment? One of my primary concerns about this particular proposal is I have heard, and may or may not be correct, I don't know, I haven't verified it, but what I have heard is that you're considering pursuing a parcel tax, which I think is one of the most unfair taxes and really is against the whole spirit of Prop 13, because you have myself, a disabled senior on a fixed income, paying the same, living in a small 700 square foot unit, and I'm paying the same parcel tax as a dual wage earner, each earning over 6 figures in a 7,000 square foot unit, and that is not equitable. So I would ask you to really consider that as you go forward. I'm also concerned about the exclusion of any senior exemption, where currently I'm not eligible for a senior exemption, but I do think that that is an important element. And just in closing, I think that the voters have already expressed their tax fatigue to you by the last parcel tax election that just barely squeaked by. So these are just some points that I would appreciate you taking into consideration, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Solomon.
You can pull it down.
Oh, thank you. I am short. My kids graduated from Redwood High School in 2006 and 2008. I only know one of you personally, Michael Futterman. Hello again. I was a huge parent volunteer in the schools when my kids were here, and I was PTA president. I worked on the foundation. I ran parent ed programs. I put my life into the school district. I also saw that we did a tremendous remodeling of the schools. When my kids were here, they lived through school construction their entire school careers. I just got wind of the fact that you guys are considering going out for another school bond, and I have to say, I'm a big supporter of this district, but if there's any chance you are thinking of going out for a huge school bond, I'm here to tell you that is a bad idea. That is not going to fly with this community at this time. And I urge you to really think hard and fast about what you're doing. Don't sit here with an overpriced wish list and think that this fancy campaign strategist is going to help you sell it to the public. It's not going to happen. I urge you to water down the wish list. Be very conservative. Be very careful about how you approach this. If someone like me is against it from the beginning, you don't have a chance of it passing. You really don't. So, no offense to the campaign strategists. I'm sure you're wonderful at what you do. But I want to echo what the women said earlier. It's premature to hire someone at this. You shouldn't be dealing with this issue in the summer when everybody's out of town. I want to echo what Barbara Owen said. Let's be transparent and upfront. Don't try to fool the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Effel again. As you know, I think these are great schools. My husband's children both graduated from Redwood. They've done extremely well. I have no complaints about what happened to them while they were students here in this district. But I do think that this presentation by the consultant is focused on the wrong thing, and it shortchanges your leadership in deciding what we really need for this school district. And I hope that that's what you'll focus on. I know that you know more about what the school district needs than I do, and I hope that's what you're going to be focusing on. Thank you.
Thank you. More public comment. Yeah.
My name is Bill Rostenberg, and I have to confess I'm having a bit of trouble following sequence and process. There were 3 consultants listed, so I'm assuming you've already decided on one, because there's only one here presenting, and this is some kind of a formality to either vote or confirm on that one. That's what it appears to be, and I could be wrong about that. But going back kind of 30,000 feet higher, there was a comment made earlier about not engaging in a master plan until and unless you've clearly identified the goals of what you want to achieve. Otherwise, you're master planning in circles. And I thought I heard, and I may have heard it incorrectly, a comment, I believe from you, that I don't know what the scope is that you're proposing.
Yeah.
That to me is a red flag, a big red flag, in addition to a lack of sequence that I think is completely backwards. It tells me that there's a lack of understanding of this process, and there's a district, public district, asking a consultant who's probably very good at what they do to not only do something that I believe is out of sequence, but to also tell you what you want them to do, which I think is also completely backwards. So I think I'm only repeating what's already been said, but there's a lot of red flags going up in terms of what I see as a wrong sequence, and more importantly, either a lack of understanding or a lack of clearly expressing what this is all about. And if all this culminates in yet one more parcel tax ballot issue, you may be doing yourself a lot more harm than good.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Hello, my name is Arlene Fox. I'm a long-term resident of Larkspur, and unfortunately I do represent the opposition you're going to try to neutralize. As a third-generation resident and taxpayer of Larkspur and graduate of Redwood, I object to local school districts taxing property owners yet again. Property assessments have gotten to the point that residents are literally being forced to leave the county and the state because they can't pay their property taxes, even when their homes have been paid off. This isn't right. One lesson my mother taught me long ago was to live within my means. Please respect the taxpayers and live within your means and try to manage finances better. Please consider increasing class sizes, eliminate frivolous projects and amenities that I've seen constructed lately, modify pensions, and if you have to, charge parents usage fees. Don't put it on the taxpayers. I suggest instead of hiring a capital campaign strategist, consider hiring a financial analyst and a good CPA to look to see of areas where you can cut costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see any other public comment. So now this comes back to the board. Is there any further discussion after hearing public comment?
Who wants to go first?
I have some comments. First, I want to say, I want to just make an observation that to each person who spoke tonight and who has paid parcel taxes or has helped to pay back bonds, I want to thank you on behalf of the school district, on behalf of our families, on behalf of our students, I would say that it may be difficult sometimes to really understand the return on investment, but if you spend time in our schools and you see the development of our kids, and if you see our dedicated teachers and counselors, and if you see, and if you had people here like Barbara Solomon talk about her kids who went through Redwood, others whose kids went through Redwood, my 3 daughters who graduated from here, there is a substantial return on investment with respect to the quality of the kids that we're turning out and their ability to function as high-quality adults. And I want to thank everybody who's paid taxes and otherwise volunteered for the schools for doing that. And we are continuing on our mission. That is really our mission. So I also want to ground this discussion a little bit. See, the advantage, one of the advantages that we have is that we're here every meeting, right? So we have a little bit of sort of greater scope of information that's been presented over the course of the last several years. And the reason we're even having this discussion about is there a need to raise revenue is because we are in the midst of a significant demographic wave in our community that is increasing the number of students who are coming into our district. So just so everybody understands, we had in the school year 2013-2014, we had 4,039 students in our district. This past year, we had 4,704 students. That's an increase of 665 students and an increase of 16.5%. Our demographic studies indicate that by the year 2021-2022, we will have 5,444 students in the district. Okay, that's an increase of nearly 35% over the course of that time. It's true that our demographers, it becomes more and more difficult to project numbers of students the further along we get in the number of years that we're projecting. But nonetheless, we continue to, we're projected to sort of level off, but continue to be at substantially above the numbers of students that we had 5 years ago. So what does that mean? Everybody had their chance. Everybody had their chance.
How many more students by 2021?
We're going to have an increase of 1,405 students. Okay, that's between 2013 and 2014 and 2021 and 2022. Just to give, I just want it right. Everybody needs to understand. Now, what does that mean? Well, what it means is we're in the people business, right? We have teachers who we have our most important resource is the quality of our teachers. What that means is that we're hiring teachers. We're hiring teachers to teach our kids. And so that we're hiring more teachers, we're hiring more counselors, we're hiring more classified staff because we're a public school district. We're not a private school. We don't turn people away. Our job is to give everybody the best education we can. This is the current challenge that we face. It requires that we have increased costs in order to hire quality teachers, to train these teachers, and it puts a significant burden on our facilities. Okay, we have teachers sharing classrooms. We have a lot of competition. We have kids who want to participate on sports teams, kids who want to participate in the arts, kids who want to do all these different kinds of things, and we're sort of forced to make choices. So if we're going to maintain the quality of education this community demands that I wanted for my kids, and I think everybody here ought to want for their kids, we need to invest in our schools. That's what's driving this. This is not a question of being greedy. This is not a question, it's not like we haven't looked at these, we've been looking at these issues for a while. We have the need to deal with this demographic reality. Okay? That's what we're grappling with. Okay, and we're trying to do it, I think, in a thoughtful way. We are a basic aid school district. Okay. Most school districts in this state receive more money for each additional student that enrolls in their district. That is not the way that we're financed. We are financed based on property taxes. We do not get extra money for each additional student that enrolls in our district. To the contrary, we have a certain amount of money, which fortunately we're very fortunate because of the property taxes available to us in Marin County, but we have to spread that money out of more students. That means we have less money to spend for educating each student. That's the dilemma that we face. Other school districts, again, it's really important to understand this, get more money per student. We don't. Okay? So the question is, where are we? So what does that mean? What that's meant for the last several years, and the board has been discussing this, is we are in a deficit spending mode right now. We are very fortunate as a board to have inherited from prior boards and prior administrations. We had reserves that have been built up in order to deal with economic uncertainty. And we have now, for the last several years, been spending down those reserves in approximately $4 million a year is what for the next 2 years is what our projections are. Okay, it can't go on indefinitely. It just simply can't go on indefinitely. We can't continue to hire new teachers. No, even if class sizes go up and we do all the things that we can, we're taking steps. We're taking steps to reduce special ed costs. There's all kinds of things that we deal with as a district. But I just want everybody to understand that's the reality that we're facing here. Okay? And so we're trying to make the best decision under those circumstances. So we have issues to deal with we have choices to make. If we're going to raise revenue, we have to think about both facilities, and we have to think about, for which it would be a bond measure, and we have to think about how are we going to pay salaries to all these extra teachers who we have to hire, right? And those are the things that we're grappling with. So I believe that we have reached the point in the process. We've spent a lot of time talking about this process. We have not made a decision with respect to whether we want to focus on facilities, whether we want to focus and go for a bond, or what the size of that bond would be, or what we really need in terms of facilities. We have not made a decision about whether we're better off going for a parcel tax, because those are funds over which we have more discretion with respect to how we spend them. We need to make that decision. I believe that we need to hire, as part of our team, a political professional who's able to help us through that decision-making process. And that inevitably is going to include more outreach to the community. If we have had insufficient outreach to the community through the process thus far, I apologize. We can do better. We will do better. Frankly, we will hold that consultant's feet to the fire in order to make sure we do better. But we do not have the in-house expertise to make this happen. We just do not. So we need a political consultant to help us through that process. So that's the grounding.
I think, if I can add, for those who have been a part of this, and with Daniel and those who preceded him, our per dollar expenditure per student has also been declining over the last couple of years as our revenue steadies and our students go up. So the amount of dollars we spend per child continues and will continue to decline in the coming years. It's not keeping up with the increase in revenue, and that was shown to the board in prior meetings as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I did want to make a few clarifications based on some comments I heard. One is that, kind of building upon what Michael Futterman was referring to, is that the draft facilities master plan is, as many of you noted, is a huge wish list. And believe me, if you'd been at the board meeting when it was presented, you would have seen that similar reaction, that we were just as eyes wide open. At the board meeting when we were reviewing the draft, we collectively asked that we look at prioritizing the projects, and we were looking at things along the lines of safety and things that really absolutely needed to be repaired, and what do we need in the way of really keeping roofs over the students' heads. That has not been done. What I've learned since then is that that's the next step, is that you come out of this plan with a list of projects that you think are the most important for your district. What is your policy? And that's where it comes in to find out, what does the community think? And do you agree? And how do you come together with that? And that is where why I was asking the question of the proposed consultant of what step does that take. And she described to me during the presentation that that was the beginning phase, where we have focus groups. Yeah, you do the polling, you ask questions, but you do a lot more, and that's where we find out, because we've heard lots of complaints, and rightly so, from community members that felt that they weren't part of the process. We do not have the staff to do that or the expertise, so that's where that part of her scope of work I can buy into, because I do want to find out from the community, what is your capacity, what are your priorities. We have a good handle of what ours are. So I want to be more clear about that. The person, and it was the gentleman, I'm sorry, I forget your name, but when you pointed out that I asked what is the scope of work, I share your concern. We've said it before. What is our path? What is the plan? And I think it's starting to crystallize. But I agree with you, and I think that if nothing else, this district has learned that we can't go along a process like this without notifying the community in a very clear way what our steps are, so that you don't get taken by surprise when you see a facility draft master plan that's $350 million. That you're not trying to find out what that is after the fact, but that we tell you ahead of time, and we have a better understanding. So I think that's our lessons learned, and it's our district staff's lessons learned, that we can't do that anymore here. But as Mr. Frederman said, we have a lot at stake. This is very serious. None of us want to ever, we value our teachers. We don't want to be faced with a situation ever that we have to cut programs or cut teachers or cut their benefits. And so we are really trying to balance all these things. And I think you have, I can only speak for myself, but I think other board members agree, but you have my word that we will continue to push the district to be more transparent and open. And I'm hoping that maybe by getting some additional help we can do that, but we're not, until we really see the scope of work. You can also be assured that we're not going to blindly just approve something. And I lastly do also want to thank you that it's really quite a place to live, that we have this many people coming out caring about the district and how we move forward. And even when it's not always pleasant conversations, that's the one reason that I think we all value this where we live. And so thank you, and please keep coming, and please keep writing. It's the only way we know, other than doing a poll or a survey. So the more we hear from you, it's very helpful. So thank you for all your comments.
Chuck or Barbara, do you have anything to add to the discussion?
I've got several things to add, and mostly they're in response to some of the comments. Someone suggested that this was a solution in search of a problem. It's really the other way around. The problem has been clearly identified. We are bursting at the seams in terms of classroom space. We have teachers in this district now. They teach 5 periods, a full-time teacher. They're teaching in 5 different classrooms. Students can't find them if they need extra help because they don't know what other classroom they're in. We have teachers who don't have desks. We have science teachers who, in the passing period, you've got 5 minutes to prep to get the next lab set up. They come in, they can't find stuff because the teacher who was teaching the previous period may have put the stuff someplace where they can't find it. My son graduated from Drake in 1987. He went on to get a doctorate from the top genetics lab in the world. He did a postdoc at MIT. He's been able to travel the world. He's had a good life. That's because of Drake, in part, in very large part. I want the students who are going to be graduating from the TAM district in 4 or 5 years to have the same quality of education, the same opportunities that my son had that has given him the life that he's had. Benedetto said that, school is...
Directly to me or not?
What?
Can you answer directly to my questions or not? I don't think you can.
Can I what?
Answer his question.
My questions directly, because then at the right.
Okay, well, I will. I'm not. It wasn't a question. I will just generally comment. School primarily is about teachers, but it's not an either-or thing with respect to facilities, because facilities impacts teaching. If you've got crappy facilities, it's going to hurt the teaching. Yes, it will. And I
Excuse me, Mr. Chico, please don't interrupt.
I explained how students can't find their teachers for extra help because they don't know what the hell classroom they're in. Teachers who don't have desks, teachers who can't find their equipment to set up science labs. It impacts teaching. The second part is going ahead with the consultants is not putting the cart in front of the horse. It's putting the horse in front of the cart. We have not determined. I have my own opinion whether there should be a parcel tax or a bond first. We need both. We certainly don't need $350 million in a bond. But we're heading toward a fiscal cliff in 2 to 3 years. If we don't have more revenue, then there are certain things we're going to do. I was on a school board in 1979, right after Prop 13, a wave of layoffs. It is incredibly dispiriting. What we're talking about is students who are taking 7 periods will have to take 6 periods because we're going to have to get rid of a whole lot of teachers. We're going to have class sizes of 35 and 40. That's just a given if we don't do something to get more revenue. And if you're fine with classes of 35 and 40, if you're fine with science labs where kids can't get to a bench, great, but it's not going to be great for the students. And in this community, I really wonder how a cutback to a 6-period day is going to float. Because in 3 years, steps like that will be necessary. You talk about cutting costs. The only way to cut costs, because salaries are 85% of the budget, is just to whack off a lot of teachers. That's it. I've been through layoffs, and I don't want to go through them again.
Comment?
Thank you. Yeah, Barbara, anything?
2 things that I heard. Our daughter graduated from Redwood High School, and as I used to say to our parents at back to school night, if I had $1 gazillion, I wouldn't have sent her elsewhere. Our district's extraordinary education for her, and I agree with you. I want all of our children to have that opportunity as she did. I do need to tell you about layoffs, though. It's typically, when it happened here, they were deep layoffs. I had been a teacher for 11 years, and I was laid off, and I'll never, ever forget it, for 4 years. It's a very significant decision to make in order to balance a budget. We did do it in this district, but I cannot tell you the level of disruption that occurred when we had to do it. There were many of us who were teacher leaders who weren't paid to be teacher leaders, who therefore were not doing other things other than teaching. We didn't help. We weren't there to help. So layoff is real easy to say, but the consequences of any to a district and to the students are very, very profound. So I'm ready to get some information from this community via some method of surveying, polling, whatever. And if that means it's another research company that we've talked with before, I'm ready for the survey business. I think we need to find out from people when they're here, certainly, from our community, what are your concerns? You came tonight, and thank you all for coming and sharing obviously you did your homework. We need to hear from more people. And the only way we can do that, I believe, is to use some opportunity or some company or somebody to help us do this outreach, to find out what people are thinking. There may be certainly many, many more people who are opposed to any form of tax increase. That may be, but we still have to solve this problem. We still have our children to care for. So if we don't do a bond or we don't do a parcel tax, we still have a huge issue to address, and that will come very soon. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what I think.
This is good, healthy discussion. This is how democracy works. The benefit of being the board president is that I get to listen to my colleagues speak very articulately about what we are facing. So I'm not going to repeat what they have said. I agree with all of your insights. And it's very helpful to have the background for those who haven't been here, although if you wanted to, we are on YouTube and you can see it all if you'd like. Because we are trying to be transparent and not sneaky, as one of our constituents mentioned in an email. We're anything but sneaky up here. We are very reflective and thorough in all of our decisions. And I think that's apparent if you've been to any of our meetings or do bother to look at our YouTube coverage. So I just have a couple comments, and one relates to the idea of this being a premature move. This agenda item that we are considering right now is to approve a capital campaign strategist. And we were told in November of 2016 that it would be a good idea then to start working on, to consider hiring a capital campaign strategist to help us with the outreach and figure out whether a bond or a parcel tax would be the way to go. We elected not to do that and to go through with the facilities master plan to see what came of that exercise and then determine whether or not to hire a capital campaign strategist. So I don't feel it's premature. Also, whenever you do a bond or a parcel tax, it's a 12 to 18-month process from beginning to election day. It is now July 2017. We are looking at the earliest we could put anything on a ballot would be June of 2018, realistically, unless we did a mail-in ballot. And we are feeling the pressure to make decisions about how we are going to gather more revenue or not. We need to make decisions as a board. That's what we were elected to do. And so I do not feel this is premature. I feel like we are at the point where we need to decide whether or not we need help from a capital campaign strategist. I do feel we need help with the priorities. The facilities master plan has a long list of recommendations. We have not, as a board, talked about how we want to prioritize what's in there at all. We haven't talked about our facilities priorities. We haven't talked about whether or not we want to go for a bond or a parcel tax. We haven't had any of those conversations. I think we need help with our priorities if we're talking about facilities. And I thought I heard the capital campaign strategist, Jill, say that that is something that we need to have figured out before we go out and poll. Did you guys hear that as well? That we need to come up with a priority. So, you know, there's some process in here. There's another step in here that needs to happen, I think, perhaps before we pull in the help of a capital campaign strategist. We need to give Jill an idea of what we feel our facilities priorities are, and then talk to Jill about, if we hire her, about whether we want to go for those or a parcel tax, or, you know, but it sounds like we need to do a little bit more homework, if I understood the process correctly. And I also feel like tonight we don't have the contract in front of us, we don't have the scope of work, and so I'm just wondering about postponing this decision until we have a chance to see that. So those are my thoughts for my colleagues up here.
So with respect to the contract, right, there was a contract that was proposed, right, and I had some comments to it. And we will have an opportunity at the next meeting to decide, to look at everybody look at the contract. In other words, I had some comments and there was some reply from Whitehurst Mosher, but it wasn't done in a time, we didn't have it done in a manner sufficiently timely for the purpose of presenting it for this meeting, I'm sorry. So we could, I suppose, make the decision now, right, to retain the firm and then decide where we don't want to enter into a contract with them. I mean, that seems unlikely. But I think we should get started, right? I think we've been postponing this. I think we need someone to help drive the process, right? And we've been talking about it since at least last November.
Yeah.
And I think, frankly, we're going to have to. I think that things are going to happen in parallel, right? We're going to have advice with respect to some of the political issues and what are the various tools to go out and assess, to gather input, right, from the community. But we can do that at the same time, if you will, and get the benefit of the advice from these professionals, while at the same time we have to go through this. To the extent that we're focused on facilities, I agree with you. We need to decide sort of what's important, what's most important. Chuck said he's not interested in $350 million. I get it. But I don't think you need to, there's no reason why we can't do some of these things, Frank. Those two things simply simultaneously. Because we're not making any decision about whether we're going out for a bond or parcel tax, and if it's a bond, what it's going to look like in the next month.
No, I know that, but okay, so you're our attorney on the board here, which is very handy, I might add. Are you comfortable considering approving a strategist without seeing the scope of work, without the rest of us seeing the scope of work?
Well, I am, because I've seen their contract, the draft contract, and it's largely consistent with the scope of work that was described in the presentation tonight. I mean, we're not going to. I can't imagine we're going to approve a contract that is not going to be consistent with the presentation tonight, right? That's the whole idea. Why are we hiring these people?
It just feels a little odd, based on our, how we conduct business.
And we're going to lose another month, is what we're going to do.
But I think we're losing another month even if we hire him. I guess what I heard, and this is what I remain concerned about, is that you said it rightly so. We could hire the consultant now. They could start doing outreach and start getting feedback, perhaps of what the priorities are. But I'm not really sure what they're going to do to help us decide what our priorities are. I mean, we gave general feedback to the consultant about the priorities in the facilities master plan. But we still need our roadmap. I mean, as you say, we could do two things at one time. I don't want to decide that tonight. What are our next two things? We ought to give ourselves a 6-month plan, a schedule. And that's why I asked the question about the scope. I'm not sure how much are they really going to help us evaluate parcel versus bond.
Maybe you should ask her.
Yeah, I mean, Jill, you're welcome to come up. I think as she does that, I think it's fair to share that it is not unusual, and we've done it here, where approval of a firm or approval of a person is separate from the contract. I remember distinctly when I was hired, you hired me ahead of the time before the contract was negotiated. So contract came at a later point. And we do that with firms.
Right.
Certainly, you would like them to be together, and like I said, the spirit was to do it together, but I was not going to bring something that, I work with trustees on different issues, as all of you know, and I wanted to make sure that, the trustee was good with the contract. So I said, we're going to pull it, and we're going to bring it when it's thoroughly vetted. And so we have every intent to bring it, but certainly, it's not unprecedented to approve the firm ahead of the contract. So I'll let Jill add some of her thoughts and questions, and maybe that'll help.
So if you could tell us what you would do the first month and maybe walk us through it. And if you can give us a roadmap for how we will make some of these decisions. I'm not sure if that's part of your scope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we do. Particularly this decision about bond versus parcel, we did it with Mill Valley when they hired us, way back in the first time we started working with them, which was 6 measures ago. We've done it for the West Contra Costa Unified School District. That, specific question we will help you work through.
And how do you do that exactly?
So-
I mean, will you come to us and say, here's what we recommend the type of your top priority projects be? I mean, what do we need to do first, second, and third?
So there's a lot of background work that needs to be done before we can go out and talk to the community, because we have to know what we're asking them, right? So there's general questions. So how do you feel about the school district? How do you feel about the level of education that's provided? That's all very important. But we also need to know, I can't ask them questions about something that we're not offering to do, right? I can't ask them, how do you feel about building a swimming pool, in the parking lot, if that's not something that you're considering doing?
So we need, I'm sorry to keep interrupting.
No,
I'm
it's
just trying to
fine.
make a list here so I could I'll get a better level of comfort. So we need to be able to, you can't tell us what our priorities are. We need to tell you, give you a list, say, we want new swimming pool lanes, whatever it is. We give you that list.
Yeah, you would
Is
say
that-
this is a list of things that are under consideration for a bond measure.
Okay,
More
is-
classrooms, more science labs, computer
Okay.
lab, whatever that is.
And do you need that list before you start?
We would need that list before we start public outreach, but there's a lot of
Okay.
work that needs to be done before we can start public outreach.
Okay.
The whole first section of the work plan is looking at the ballot, analyzing the electorate, working with you to develop that. That's the whole first part of the work plan. So that before because we need to know, once we start going out and developing a poll and developing public outreach tools, that what we're asking people.
Okay, so what is our drop dead date that we'd have to give you a list of projects? For you to do that upfront work, how long will that take? It doesn't have to be exact. Are you talking about 2 months? 1
It's a
month?
couple months.
2 months. So in 2 months, this board needs to be ready to give you a project list, and the project list might be one thing, but it might be several. And then
The list of things that you're considering putting in a bond measure.
Okay, and then you go do work, and then you come back and say, they don't agree with you. You got to rethink this, or you'll come back and say, yeah, they agree with you. And that's another 3 months, or?
Well, your list can be overly inclusive, right? You don't have to say, this is the exact list we would put on. You could say, these are the things that we would consider. Maybe it is the big $350 million, and then you just want to know of that, what the public wants to see in a bond measure. But it doesn't have to be a financially constrained list, is what I would call it. It needs to be a list of potential things that you would consider. And on the revenue side, some concept of a range of, are we looking at a straight renewal? Are we looking at a renewal and an increase? What range of increase, what's your dream number versus what's the bare minimum we need to not make cuts or to not make really damaging cuts? And those are the things that we'll take out to the community and test with the community.
And then do you take questions to the community about parcel tax at the same time?
Yeah.
And so you then, so if we're looking at a 2-month time frame between now and, 2 months from now, we have to come up with a project list. Within 2 months, do we need to provide you information about what sort of teacher shortage we're looking at? And when we think that's going to happen?
So a couple things. I just want to back up, which is the first thing we need to do is look at like a longer term. One of the things we talked about doing was putting together a timeline. So I don't want you to make you feel constrained that in 2 months we have to go out with a poll and then we have to, what we need to do is figure out what the best situation is here, given what, there's a lot that I don't know about what you've done. I haven't seen a lot of it, but we're talking about, I think, from the beginning, starting to meet weekly with the district to figure all this out and put us on a timeline, get the timeline approved, then we bring in a pollster, get the poll approved. You're going to be some subset of the board is going to be part of that ongoing process as we build this together. And then, poll is restricted by time and how many questions we want to ask. So we may get to a point where we say, that is important and we want to know what the community thinks versus not. So it's an ongoing process. I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question, but it's sort of hard to say, this is going to happen on August 1st, and then on August 15th, we're going to get a list from you. It's a much more collaborative process.
I'm just saying general, because right now I have nothing. I have nothing. If you'd said 6 months, I would have written that down. I'm not asking for an exact, just trying to get a better feel. So the way you're talking, this is going to take you being on, it sounds somewhat iterative, And we're talking about a 9-month process then?
What we're proposing is we think we can do a majority of the work, or at least set you up to do a majority of the work within the 6-month period.
Okay.
And then at least by the end of the 6-month period, you can say, look, we've looked at the options, and we've done at least a public opinion poll, and we've looked at the different ballots, and we're not going to go until 2022, so we don't need you anymore. And we'll come back to you later when we want to do the public outreach later. Or maybe you say, we got to go, and we got to go right now. So we need to be, within the 6 months, we're fielding a poll, and we're preparing a public outreach plan, and we're giving that to you, and either you're executing it or you're continuing our contract to do it now. But what we think is, within 6 months, we can get you to the point where we have some more clear direction about where we all think together. It's not us just telling you, it's our working together, where you think we're going to go and how we would get there.
Okay, that helps me a little bit. Thanks.
Sure. Anything else?
No, thank you, Jill. Okay, any more from the board on this?
Yeah, can I make just a general comment? That we tend to compare ourselves to those closest around us. So when you look at the state of the TAM district, if you compare us to San Rafael, to Novato, to Petaluma, Rohnert Park, Cotati, we're doing pretty well. But we need to keep in mind that California on per pupil spending is damn near at the very bottom of the United States. And when we're comparing ourselves to other communities, we should be thinking about communities like Fairfax County, Virginia, Short Hills in New Jersey, Shaker Heights in Ohio, Greenwich, Connecticut. And when you compare Redwood High School, which I think is kind of a gem, to those schools, it's like a ghetto school. And the offerings we have for students, oh yes they are. The offerings we have for students, don't compare. Our California's per pupil spending is about half of what Vermont's is.
Okay. So this is an action item if we want it to be, but we need a motion for that to happen. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve Whitehurst Mosier as our capital campaign strategist?
Can I ask one question? Oh, sorry, Michael.
Well, that's all right. You can ask the last question.
So, Dr. Yoshihara, we have some other things we need to do from hearing from the consultant that she will not, or the firm will not be part of.
Yes.
The biggest is for the board to look closer at the draft facilities master plan, get some clarity. We need to decide whether we're going to ask, what sort of projects we're going to ask for. How do you see us doing that with the timeline she just provided? It sounds like we should be starting to work on that, over the next,
Sure,
6 weeks.
number of months.
Yeah.
So yes, certainly I will work with the strategist to find how to parse that information in a manner that's useful to them, and then work with, through the president, the process for that. How do we do that? What method of which to move that forward, and we'll communicate that out. So that may be, there's got to be a way to bring the board together to have those discussions and that dialogue. So, that'll be determined based upon her time frame, and she will, like I said, she'll create a timeline for us, and I'll work with her on that and work with the president to develop that. Hopefully by the next meeting you'll have a more concreteness to that and what that will look like. And as you know, through the weekly updates, you'll get updates from me of what's going to be needed and how we move forward.
Maybe I misunderstood. I thought that's what we were going to be doing in parallel, that we would provide that to her.
Yes.
By working with, and so she wasn't really necessarily a part of that working. It sounds like this is really a district and a board exercise that
Sure.
we need to accomplish within probably the next 2 months. And do you think we can do that? And how do we do that in a way that we're able to get the work done and keep the community aware, but know that this is work we need to do? I'm just looking at our timeline.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Like I said, I need to work with the strategist to see what they need and how that could look. But then, yes, we will do the work here. And whether that's, I don't know if that's a workshop or that's some kind of, venue by which the board come together and have that conversation with staff to move that forward. So yes, there's going to be some time that needs to be
Yeah, so we
devoted.
have a couple months, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
there's going to be some time that needs to be devoted to that.
I think we would need a full complement of board members to talk about the priorities.
Yes, hence the workshop kind of idea, but yes,
Yeah,
board meeting
okay.
kind of, yes,
Okay.
public venue for which that can occur.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you, Michael. Sorry.
It's good questions.
Were you going to make a motion? I thought you were in the process of that. No pressure.
Yeah, I move that the board approve the selection of Whitehurst Mosher as the campaign strategist.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion on this?
I'm sorry, I'm doing it again. So we approve them, so we're making a commitment, but we're not giving them notice to proceed until we have a chance to look in 3 weeks? Or is that the concern, Michael, is that you want them to be able to start now doing the backup, the initial task of doing the initial research? And I agree with you. It'd be nice, we don't want to lose any more time.
Yeah,
I'm agreeing with that. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I don't, look, ideally, we would have had the contract available tonight, right? With
Whose fault was that again? I'm teasing.
Our staff.
Okay. Okay.
Which we don't have. So,
Okay.
but this happens not just in the school district, this happens, in my experience, not infrequently, and the parties just work together sort of simultaneously in good faith to get the contract. So we have sort of a meeting of the minds on the agreement, and listen, we don't have an agreement, we don't have a contract with them, so I suppose the Gilliner firm could decide we're not going to do anything until we sign the contract, and it's within their sort of legal prerogative to do so. But generally speaking, the parties work in good faith to try to meet some kind of understanding. She has already indicated what the financial, what the proposed scope of the finances are, right?
She has.
$5,000 a month over a 6-month span, right? So
Yes.
we know the basic economics of it, and then we'll have to make the decision, and we'll make the formal decision. Look, we're a public body, right? We can only approve the contract at meetings, so unless we want to have I don't even want to suggest that.
No, again, but it is. I mean,
I guess
there's certainly a risk factor, and again,
Well,
the
I
same
know, I
happens with
understand.
construction firms.
And that's why I guess I'm unclear. What are we approving then if we're not approving the contract?
Well,
Or
you're
we are
essentially approving the
contract?
firm and with the understanding that the contract will come at the next meeting, and being, as Michael said, parties operating in good faith, yes, they could certainly say
But
we're not
it's
going to
their risk if they choose to
There
work.
is a risk,
It's-
but
well,
typically
it's
they
not our
will
risk.
begin work.
But it's not our risk, it's their risk if they choose to
Yeah,
work.
I
They're
mean,
they're
I thi-
risking not getting paid,
I
but
think
we're
in
not at
fairness.
risk.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And same thing with construction firms. When they begin work, again, they're running against a clock too, and they have a clock, and they realize that they want to provide good service to the board. It certainly, it's a value to them to provide a good experience and hopefully continue business down the road. But yes, there's a risk to them, and we would not pay them without bringing the contract to the board. So that's the plan.
I'm, given that there's a lot of, well, it seems to be some overlap here, we're also going to then have to consider a separate survey company at a separate amount of money.
Correct.
Yes.
That's not unusual. If you look at the proposals last time, they all go out for the pollster. It's not atypical. If you go back and look at the three, the pollster cost is not included in their cost. So yes, that is accurate. They do not include the cost of the pollster within the scope of work.
So in a sense, we're approving the firm based on your presentation that you evaluate them. You provided us information about the metrics you use. So we're basically just approving the firm. Then you come back and we approve the contract, and that's when we look at the scope of work and we approve the contract. And as far as we're concerned, that's when notice to proceed is. If they decide to do something else, that's their choice. But officially, that's what we're really approving
Yeah,
now.
an authorization to pay.
We're approving that you made this selection, and then we're approving the contract, whatever they choose to do. If they want to do some upfront work, that's their decision, but we're not really authorizing that
Correct.
officially. Okay.
Correct. They're they would
That's
not get
the-
paid for anything prior to,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
contract approval.
Right, that's what I wanted to
Okay,
make
so the
clear.
6 months, when would we determine when that 6-month period begins? Does it begin now, today, this evening?
That's a good legal question.
Technically
Well,
not.
the current draft of the contract says August of 2017 through January. So that would be, that's what it says in the current draft. But the idea is, look, I don't want to keep repeating myself. We're either comfortable doing this or we're not comfortable doing it.
Yeah, it's
I
almost
think I'm
splitting
just
hairs.
not-
I mean, it's.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm not comfortable. That's why I was comfortable saying it the way I did before. If we're just approving who you awarded the contract to, or, the award, and you went through that process, but the contract's not live until we approve it at the next meeting, and that's NTP, I'm comfortable approving that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's a discussion for the board to have, because you'll look at the start date on there, right?
And that's the start date,
And it'll
and
say,
that's- yeah.
it'll say some date. And if you say, well, hey, let's talk about that date. And that, again, that's the contract approval. So yes, the contract will come for discussion for the board to approve and say, okay, I'm not comfortable with that. Well, 6 months begins on this date, and that's what the board, that's what we'll pay on.
Yeah, Michael?
I guess one
Is that the
thing,
way it works?
the only other observation I would make is that this is a firm that has done and will continue to do other work in Marin County, right? So they depend upon sort of the continued earning the goodwill, as like any business, right? They depend on the continued earning goodwill of school boards and so forth and other municipalities in order for them to be able to continue doing the work. So I happen to have, I didn't impact your decision-making, but I happen to have some familiarity with this firm. I know one of the founders of the firm. He's not a close friend of mine, but in another century, we were involved in some things together, and this is a highly reputable firm in their field. And I don't want to make David go back and go through this selection process again.
No, and that's why I said I can
I don't
approve.
think that would be productive.
No, and I'm not asking that. I'm just, in the fact, what I'm trying to clarify is, right now, we're voting to approve who he selected.
Right.
And approving the contract, and the contract date that I would assume we would see at the next meeting would not be, the notice to proceed would not be before the next meeting, because then why are we even approving it? We wouldn't have a signatory responsibility. And so that's what I expect to see. The notice to proceed is not before the next board meeting. If somebody chooses to do some upfront work on their own dime, by all means, but that's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Makes sense.
I do have a question that I should have asked you about a half an hour ago, and that was, I know that we have Whitehurst Mosier here. They're the ones that you have selected based on your criteria. How close was it? Was this like a,
TBWB and Whitehurst were relatively close. I think for me, the references were important, and I did do a fair amount of reference checking on both firms and the responses that were received. I think broadly with TBWB, feedback was generally, I have to be careful because the firms are here as well, but I think generally less favorable than the responses I got from Whitehurst with respect to references. Prices was more easily, because you can see the prices in their proposal last time, so that was easier to weigh. Size of firm is also fairly easy, either by number of clients or scope of services delivered. And then client familiarity was easy too, as Michael said. Both TBWB and Whitehurst have done a lot of work within Marin County. So it was really, I think, in fairness, consideration for those two. Not that I didn't check for Telecu and that I didn't do due process for them, but certainly between those two. And for me, working with both of them, spent most of the time just following up on the references and questions that the references had. Make sure you do this, make sure you check that, and working back. And Jill knows that we had a lot of conversations with her on things that I said these are things that are coming out, and I had the same with TBWB in regards to what about this, what about that, what about who's going to work with us and how long and all that kind of stuff. So those were the two in serious consideration.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor.
I guess I kind of would like to know what the rest of you are going to vote. I just, I'm just, yeah, I feel, I just feel a little bit conflicted right now, and I would like to know what each of you is thinking in terms of voting on this particular motion. Can I ask you that? No? Can't?
Well, they motioned
I
and
made,
second.
I made the motion.
Yeah,
That's a
and
pretty,
I-
that's
and I-
a,
yeah.
that's a pretty
So-
good clue.
And I think, and I was pretty clear that I would vote for it if it was clear that I'm just voting that, yes, this is who you selected. That's what I'm voting now. And I'm voting for the contract at the next meeting.
Okay.
And I said I wanted NTP, notice to proceed, in the contract at the next meeting, not to be tomorrow.
Okay.
That's my vote. And then if it comes back differently, then I may not vote for the contract next week.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean, I mean, I'm just,
And
Laura?
sneak peek on my vote is that I am comfortable with the process and the firm that Dr. Yoshihara selected. And so that is the agenda item before us, and
Thank you.
I think in clarification for Leslie, it's the notice to proceed to work with them to develop that contract as well. So now I'm going to work with them to formally work that contract because I had to have a firm to begin to work that with. So now I can work with them, answer those questions.
so we pay firms to negotiate with us now?
No, but what we're doing is I need to be able to make sure the terms of that contract are within what the board is comfortable with. Right? And so,
I'm not sure what you're saying. You said that NTP will be sooner than when we see the contract?
no, it allows me now to formally begin that contract process with them and get,
Right, that's what, that's exactly it. When
Yes.
that's what, yeah, thank you for adding that.
All right.
Yeah, that's the, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I feel good.
Michael, can you restate your motion? Do you remember? It was like 15 minutes ago.
I just read it from the agenda, that the board
Okay.
approved the selection of Whitehurst Mosher as the campaign strategist.
All right, and we don't, okay, so nobody wants any, and we had a second.
Okay.
So now's the time to vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
thank you. Thank
You
you,
are
Joe.
our campaign strategist. Thank you.
Pending the contract.
Pending the contract approval. Okay. On to item G, approve revised job description for Assistant Superintendent Ed Services.
Thank you. Is it Ed Services we're doing first? Thank you. So members of the board, this was brought forward last time, and there was some feedback, so this is a revision. For Ed Services, from what I recall off the top of my head, there was some clarification with regards to knowledge, skills, and abilities, and specificity as it relates to that in the position. So those changes were made. I worked with the board president as well as obviously Dr. Topier in regards to that. And what you see before you tonight is a revision based upon that feedback. So unless there are any questions, I would ask the board approved the revised job description for Dr. Topier.
Questions on the revision? This came back to us.
And we did separate the two. I think they were
This
combined
is,
last time.
this is item G. This is Ed Services.
Yeah, thank you, because I don't think I had one on that one.
I appreciate that you added the knowledge, skills, and abilities section that pertains to other parts of
The job.
this job. Any questions?
No,
Leslie's still
I
searching.
see the changes again, yes. I'm in agreement with these, thank you.
Is there any public comment on this? I would
Bless you.
entertain a motion to approve the revised job description for the Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services. Gesundheit.
I move we approve the revised job description for the Assistant Superintendent of Education Services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Educational Services.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
next.
So moving right along, this is H. So in similar fashion, This was brought back as a revision, and the last time, just highlighting some of the changes. I think it was listed Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services. This time it is specific, and that is the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Facilities. Within the knowledge, skills, and abilities, there was also changes made within that area, and working both with Mr. Christensen and the board president. And then there was a request for change as it relates to the area of bargaining. And so that was restored back to the former language, so that it's something to the fact that the Assistant Sup of Human Resources and Facilities is involved in the collective bargaining process. She could probably scroll down to where that was, but it was restored back to its former language. And then the rest of the stuff was as was presented last time. So again, I'm happy to answer questions. Otherwise, I ask the board to approve this revision to the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Facilities.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yep, Barbara.
I don't have a question, I have a concern.
Okay.
The scope of this job now, as presented here, I find enormous. Enormous to the extent that my concern is that the human resources portion has been so significantly improved in the district since the last administration. And in that area, what was left there were some significant causes for despair, if you will, I'm being exaggerating, for employees. This is an area, human resources is significant for everybody every day. And typically, if something comes up that's a crisis in your life, human resources is what sustains us so we can continue doing our jobs. And I don't want to do anything that's going to distract or take away from the process that was established here that is developing, I mean, is grounded. We've got new teachers and new staff coming in that need training. They need a whole lot of stuff. And so my experience in this district over time has been that the superintendent is in charge of facilities. So that HR can get, it demands an awful lot of time and attention, and we need to give it. I see, I'm sure that this is not, it's not a, I know it's a personal interest that, and you've, as a principal, you know, there are some, obviously you've had some experience here, but I'm just concerned that it is, it's excessive for this job. I see it as a responsibility of the superintendent, so I have difficulty with this particular expansion of the job description. I have difficulty supporting it.
I have a question. Are you done?
Yes.
Under Ability 2, page 3, top of page 3 of 3, that you have a list of bullets, and you added 2 items, both in underline. And the bottom one says, work with construction project manager in directing large-scale facilities work. Can, let's see.
Other way.
Oh, there's no page numbers
Page
on yours.
3
There we
of
go.
4,
There it is.
page
Yeah.
3.
So it says, work with construction project manager in directing large-scale facilities work. Can you explain more what are you talking about, the portables, or are you talking about, what are you referring to?
So yes, as the district encounters or embarks upon work that is larger in scope, and there isn't necessarily a predefined amount per se, but certainly looking at phase 2 of interim housing could be a situation that warrants that. Certainly, if you were to embark upon a bond, it would warrant that. So typically in those situations, you have a project manager, an outside sort of individual who leads that with the knowledge, specific knowledge to that piece. But that person needs direction from staff, in which case this position would provide that direction. So that was the idea of it, and that's usually how it's been done in my past experience, and probably I would venture with Lars and his past experience as well. So he doesn't, or the position isn't the one managing that, again, because, as Barbara said, HR is demanding enough that there will come a point where that would need an additional resource to oversee and manage that.
So I think that's my one concern with that wording, is that I can see it making sense if this part of the work had to do with, like you said, phase 2 with the portables. But if we did get into a bond, the previous, I think the district before had a director of modernization, and well, they did, and it's a much bigger job, and they often require somebody that's had a lot of experience. And for instance, when they did it recently of College of Marin, you needed to have construction and some engineering experience in it. And so I just wanted to be careful that we didn't mean and that would be a full-time job, I guess is what I'm getting at. That then HR would go away. So I just want to be careful with that one, that really doesn't mean that if we go out for a bond that this position would. We made a different set of quals, in other words, for that position. And we don't know what that looks like yet. So I just want to make it clear that. And then I mean, I'm just building upon what I said last time, is that I understand that when things change, that people have to double up, and it's great that we have talent that can do that, but to do it long term and indefinitely and make it official, I have a hard time with, just from the simple math of what Barbara was commenting on. You have a list of requirements or job duties with one position, and then you pile on the second position. Basic math tells you that one person can't do it, and without a plan of delegating some of the work to maybe lower level staff or staff that can offload some of the responsibility, it makes sense. And then on top of which, you've said that this is not an area of the current staff member and that you would be overseeing it quite a bit. And does it make sense to spend administrative costs on a high-paying person to be learning a job doing it day to day rather than delegating it to somebody like a project manager or a planner that could do it? So I see a couple things here, that it's the volume of work, like Barbara said, but then how we're spreading the work out appropriately to different pay grades is the best way to put it. And that's a concern I have, that we're just doing that rather than looking at backfilling some of the job duties, whether it's HR and facilities, with people that can do the day-to-day stuff. I mean, this reads more like if somebody's going to take both these departments on, they're not doing hands-on work every day, and they're not out in the parking lot waiting for the portable.
Yes.
At that pay level also.
Yes, I think by and large.
I think the optics look really odd to have somebody at that pay rate doing day-to-day stuff because we don't have somebody. I just don't think it's a good solution.
Yeah, that's not what's listed there. Those are more administrative level functions in terms of what was listed there. This is not, this is not a lower level position who would, the ads that way. Again, we're looking at the position description. So yes.
Could maybe, I'm just trying to build a little bit on some of Leslie's questions. Could you describe sort of the difference? So you can even use these portables as an example. Describe the difference in responsibilities between what Lars is doing and what David is doing with respect to the project.
Yeah, that'd be good. Good question.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at the portables, what Lars would be doing as it relates to securing that is he's involved on the contract side when there's not only as you see up there, the bid process, but the selection of the contract, questions around the contractor, approving the contract, as well as issues that would come up as it relates to construction. So David might say, hey, we got a problem here with the constructor. They, as we have at Drake with, where they created some damage. That's an issue. David needs to be sort of on the ground, know what's going on, know where's, but the resolution of that damage is now sort of going back to the firm. And if there's problems, that would be a position like Lars to then work with the contractor, the head of whoever that is, and say, we need to address this. So those are some of that's an example as it relates to, the portables. As we look now at for example, phase 2, David's going to look at, at TAM, if we can be specific, some possible locations for that to go. It's like, okay, it could go here, it could go here. But then the scope of work, the change orders, those are sort of contractual fiscal ramifications then that Lars would be involved in, and making those. He's the one who brings it to the board for the approval. He'll work with in terms of what their scope of work will be. So again, those are higher level functions that I see, this position doing.
Wouldn't David be involved with the change order since he's basically in the field and he would know what was fair?
He'll do like the punch list. Yes, he'll create, what, this was done, this still needs to be done. But if there's problems and if there's issues where they're not doing or not following through, then it becomes Lars to then sort of follow that, follow up on the contractual stuff. But yes, on the ground level, following the contract, that would be David to make sure that they're following the contract. But if they aren't and there's issues, then Lars needs to comes in and addresses it from, the next level.
And then how are you planning to help with offloading some of his work in HR?
I don't know if there's an easy, I have to think about that more. If we look back at the business position, there are 3 directors that fall under there, right? There was 4 directors. There's fiscal services, there is maintenance and operation or facilities, there is child nutrition, and there is community education. And all of these reported to the chief business official. So I'm not sure if, Barbara, you're indicating that all 4 directors should fall under the superintendent, but there are 4 director level positions. And I don't know if there's an easy answer. The proposal that was shared with the board and the org chart that was sent out to the board and all management last week recommended that facilities, director facilities, fall under this position. Then the 3 other directors, child nutrition, fiscal, and community education, fall under superintendent. So that's sort of the division. To say that you're going to be able to do the same and just add this on isn't fair. Like most things, much like when teachers have class sizes increase, to say that you're going to be able to teach the same is not fair. There is a give and take to that. And so to say, well, he's not going to do this or not going to do that, I would assume he has the professionalism to prioritize, and when there's questions, he'll come to me and say, hey, we're not going to be able to update the job descriptions as quickly as we want to. Those board policies, I'm going to need some help and may not be able to get to those as quickly as I'd like to. I think some of those, and certainly to know that he would be able to prioritize what's important, in terms of, evaluation timelines and sort of those things, and retirements and all those are important. But yeah, to say, well, he's not going to do that, I wouldn't have the answer to that here.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No. Okay. I don't have any questions. My questions, you incorporated the concerns I had into this revision, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I like that this now reads, I read it as this person has more of a supervisory role for facilities. Yeah. And I want to make sure that that person has the necessary skills to notice when there needs to be, when there's a red flag on something.
Yeah. And I think in fairness, absolutely, if there are low-level clerical classified level work that he needs help with, I believe we have a good enough relationship that he can come forward and say, we need, I think as some of you said, we need somebody to help with this, this, and this. And we would consider that and possibly bring that forward as some more additional help for the position.
Is there any chance we can revisit this, whatever's decided tonight, at some other time? Can we look at it and see, let's see how this works for a year? And
absolutely.
Come back and reconsider it?
Good idea.
Because we are growing.
And things change, like you say, and yeah, absolutely. The position, the people are evaluated each year. I bring that to the board, and we certainly can do a mid-year check-in and say, you know, what are you hearing? What are your concerns, and what are the things I should be thinking about? Absolutely.
I like that idea, Barbara. I think a mid-year check-in may be
At
good.
the latest, yeah.
See, take a temperature.
We'll make note of that in the minutes. And
Okay, any other questions? All right, so this is an action item.
It is.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve it? You'd have to be more eloquent about your motion than that.
She's making us talk.
I am making you talk, yeah.
I move that the board approve the revised job description and title change of the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources to Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Facilities.
Second.
Any more discussion? Did I ask for public comment on this? I'm sorry. Is there any public comment on this?
With that motion, what about revisiting it in a year? Does that not need to be a part of the motion, or just clarification?
Oh, good question. It wasn't in the agenda as being part of it.
You know, I think we have enough of it seems like we have a meeting of the minds with respect to.
Yeah.
And the position is
necessity
evaluated
of that.
every year.
And my guess is that the board's not going to, if we don't get it, somebody in this group will ask.
We have assurances from the superintendent that it will be revisited next year.
It'll be in
And-
the minutes, too.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask for public comment. Is there any other public comment out there? Who's back there, David? Oh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, now that we've got public comment and no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That was 3-2. That motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is entitled Approve Appointment of Board Members to Review 2017 Staff Satisfaction Survey Results. So I prepared something to write down because I knew it was going to be late and I wanted to not screw this up. So TFT conducted a staff satisfaction survey in the spring of 2017 and gave the results to each trustee. The survey and results are very comprehensive. The board would like to respond to the results of the survey in a constructive manner without violating the Brown Act. To enable the board to have a focused discussion of the survey at a public meeting, I suggest that we appoint 2 trustees to thoroughly review the results, meet with TFT leadership as they see fit, and do anything else that they think is appropriate with the goal of presenting a report with recommendations for productive ways to move forward at one of our 2 September board meetings. So that's homework for these 2 trustees if we decide to go this route. My suggestion, I've thought about this a lot. I also talked to our legal counsel about this because I wanted to make sure that we were doing things right. And my thought is that we should have 1 vintage trustee, vintage meaning Michael, Chuck, or myself, and 1 not-so-vintage trustee, meaning you 2. And the reason behind that is that the 3 of us who've been on the board since December of 2013 have some institutional knowledge of these surveys. And I also think it's important for 2 of our newer members to be involved in this process, so when it happens again in 2 years, which I assume it will, you have some experience with it. I also think that it would be, this is my opinion, but I have thought about this, that it would be nice to have a former teacher, we have 2 of them on the board, be one of the 2 to dive a little deeper into this. So those are my 2 suggestions as we discuss this. And then a reminder to the board that the only relevant response to this survey is from a majority of the board, if not the full board. And that when this report comes back to us in September, that the other 3 trustees who are not appointed will have a chance to weigh in, and that will be the time for all 5 of us to talk about this survey in public. So, with that, I am wondering what you think about this idea.
Can I observe that I'm not quite as vintage as you are?
Yeah. No, that is not a good observation. Chuck, you're the most vintage of our group.
We are all teachers in some form or another.
Yes, we are. Do you like this idea?
I do like the idea.
We
Very
haven't
much.
had a formal response to this survey. This is not something the district generated, but I think we could be very productive with the results of the survey. And I'd like to get it done sooner than later so we can move forward in a collaborative effort with TFT leadership and admin if we want to involve admin. I don't mean to be turning my back on you all the time.
No worries.
Any other input from the board?
I like the idea of definitely having a teacher, a former teacher. I guess you'll always be a teacher, but because there are so many parts to this that they'll, very productive suggestions made by teachers that I know that I don't completely comprehend and understand the full nature. So I think it's really important to have, a teacher on for some, especially the technical teaching suggestions.
I've read over the survey several times, and I've done quite a bit of work on it already. I think it's a goldmine of professional ideas, professional assessments, and evaluations. And we've got these. Obviously, we've talked about the level of professional ability our staff has demonstrated. So I want to work with this material whether I'm selected or not. It's very rich material, and I think it's very valuable. So I really approve of the idea. I think it's an excellent way to address it so that we can really make use of this wealth of information and expertise.
Leslie, do you like this idea?
I like it, and Barbara's both young and she's a former teacher. Just want to mention that.
I was going to go to their side.
She's non-vintage.
Okay, so it sounds like we agree that this is a good idea. Michael, did I hear you think this was a good idea? Yes, he's getting sleepy. So we need to...
Even if he's less senior than
He's
we are.
good, yeah. He's starting to...
So we need to appoint 2
He's
people.
moving away from the table.
I can't see.
Well, I know.
I'm constantly jockeying back.
I know, you get sore necks when you're down. I mean, yeah, I go home with a stiff neck.
Well, okay, so
Yeah, good idea.
Barbara and Chuck are their 2 former teachers. Sounds like Barbara's done some deep diving already. How do you feel about her being the former teacher representative?
I'm happy with that. I'd like to be the teacher too, but
Okay,
if Barbara wants to deep
No.
dive.
Vintage.
He could be the vintage.
But then we have 2, I kind of want a perspective, a non-teacher
Yeah.
perspective
Right.
to look at this.
Okay,
Okay, so-
I would like, I'd like you to look at it because you do combine the teacher and the experience on the board and the school district, and I think that's a great idea. I mean, I'll participate wherever it can be useful, but yeah, I pick you. Do I get to do that?
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure, Leslie, you understand the dynamic.
That means that you get what just happened.
This wasn't lost.
You're making a decision for somebody else.
No, it's more because I'm just busy right now, but check.
Okay.
So you two, are you two good with this appointment?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you
it'll be fun.
can work on this
No, I
and
love it. It's like Barbara said, there's a wealth of information. I know I'll learn a lot from you too on some of the jargon that was, some of the things that were
Oh,
said
yeah.
that I didn't understand. So I'm looking forward to
Do you
it.
know what UBD is?
No, see, yeah, I'm like, what was that? Yeah.
So the three of us who are not selected are not going to be providing any input on the TFT survey until it comes back with recommendations from these two esteemed board members. But you two can talk to whomever you want about this. So thank you for doing that. It's not, we need to make a motion and a second and approve. This is an action item. I move to appoint Chuck Ford and Leslie Lundgren as the two board members to review the 2017 Staff Satisfaction Survey results.
I second it.
All those in favor? Oh, wait, we didn't have public comment. Jeez, I'm losing it.
You're vintage.
I just want to say thank you. Whether implied or explicit, it's clear that you are expressing that you honor and value the voices that are behind this survey and its intent. And I look forward to working with all of you at some point or another and making useful recommendations from the feedback that we have gotten from our teachers and counselors. And I will avail myself to you to the fullest extent I can to do that work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, my God.
Laura, Chuck and Leslie are the two appointed members. Did you get the motion in the second?
Yeah, I thought it was Chuck and Barbara, but
No, it's Chuck.
Chuck and Leslie. Okay. I'm getting slap happy up here.
Well, the motion was not Chuck and Leslie.
No, the motion was Laura and Barbara.
Yeah.
sorry, yeah.
What?
Yeah,
Oh, it was?
Laura and Barbara made the motion. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
we made the motion.
Okay.
Yes, we
Yeah.
made the motion. That's true.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Item J, second reading of board bylaws, 9240.
I don't know if you want to go through these all together or separately. We got a whole bunch. The first two are brought back from an earlier period of time in January, specifically 9240, working with Trustee Owens, sort of combining a little bit of some of the recommendations with what staff recommendations were. This is, so we try to do our best to bring that forward. So that's what 9240 is. So this is one you saw before. That's why I said second read. But we wanted to put it out separately just because we did involve board input in that process.
Does anyone have any questions on this? It's been out there for a while. Nope. Any discussion? Any public comment? Do I have a motion?
I move we accept the second reading of the board bylaws BB 9240.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next.
Similar, this is January. Same thing for board feedback and bringing it back for a second read.
Questions on this one? Public comment? Do we have a motion? Somebody has to make a
All right,
motion.
I move we approve the second reading of board policy 9323.
I second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Man. Okay. L.
All right.
First, these are first readings.
These are all first reads. There's no action, so if you want to take them all together, there's one that we pulled. We pulled N, so you'll get N again next
I
time.
want to go them one by one.
Okay, Leslie.
Are you being sarcastic? She's being sarcastic. Okay,
We
just
will,
clump 'em.
we will note that, sarcasm. And all first reads, all the way down. So if not, we will bring them back at the next board meeting.
Some of these are so old.
They are quite old.
They go way back
I feel bad, but yes, I'm glad to,
was right. Yes.
glad to get them updated.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot. They're coming along. I appreciate the work of Dr. Topier and Christensen in helping moving these along.
And item P, you're changing AR to BP in the rationale section.
Correct,
Okay.
but the attachments are all correct. So yes.
I wanted to note on P that I liked the chart. It's much more clear. I wrote that down.
Okay.
Can't remember, but the chart was an improvement.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first readings are all taken care of. That took us through R.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yoshihara, for trying to get us up to date on our board policies. I really appreciate that.
Very much.
Item 16D was pulled. It's the purchase orders. I think that Michael pulled it.
Yes, hang on, let me pull it up.
Was it around the year? I can't remember.
Yes. Okay. So it's just page, right, it's just page 3 of the page, sorry, hang on.
16D, Mary.
Page 2 of the document, it just says fiscal year 2016, 2017. It needs to be fiscal year 2017, 2018.
That was
All of these are expenditures beginning July 1st.
Oh, it's correct.
Okay. So it'll be corrected?
Yeah, it's already corrected. We just didn't vote.
Well,
Well, we need to import it.
So, but in this version, we need to make the correction.
Oh, yeah, I see, page 2.
16D.
title of the document needs to say, it's correct in the agenda, it's not correct on the document.
I see.
If you look at page 2 of the document.
Go to
On
16D.
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A.
Fiscal year.
Yeah, 16D.
Yeah.
Good eye.
Yeah, thank you.
I missed
And then open it up.
because it was good here.
I just read the title of it. I didn't look
So
at the
here-
top, the.
There you go.
Right there. It goes, fiscal year.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
be changed to 1718.
Okay. So, thank you.
Okay, with that change noted, do we have a motion to approve purchase orders, list number 1?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carried. Item 16J, I pulled. It's the approved Cal Elite Builders for the Portable Classroom Electrical Project. I asked staff how many people bid on this job, and I wanted all of you to hear the answer.
We had 4 firms bid on the electrical contract for the second phase, the electrical work on the portables, phase 1. Cal Elite Builders out of Fairfield, California was the successful low bidder at $128,700. The other 3 bids ranged from $167,500 up to $272,844. So a dramatic range in electrical bidding. So we've gone with Cal Elite. I have spoken to them personally, as has David O'Connor. Per the board's approval this evening, they will begin work prior to the actual and it really comes back to the conversation we had with regard to the political strategist. They know that they would proceed at their own risk. We do intend on approving a contract and paying them, but they are going to begin the work so we can get that wrapped up and finished. And the actual contract, you have the dollar figure in front of you, but the actual contract with the bonds and insurance and so forth will be coming to the board via consent on the August 8th meeting.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this item? Any public comment? Okay, I move to approve item 16J to approve Cal Elite Builders for the Portable Classroom Electrical Project.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh,
I'm
question.
really sorry to do this at this late
That's
hour.
okay.
So you said they're on their own risk, they're going to go out in the field and do this work?
They're going to begin the work. They won't finish, but yeah, they're
Right,
going to
so
begin.
are we at all, like they'll have their own health and safety plan?
All of that, yes.
If they got hurt on our property.
They've already
during
provided
constru-
their insurance, their bonds, and everything
Okay,
to us.
that's
They've
okay.
already sent that in.
So even though we don't have a contract,
Yeah.
Michael, that we're safe, even though we haven't, I mean, no, if they,
Legal opinion?
you betcha. You're a lot cheaper than our attorneys. But we don't have a signed.
They provided all the information.
But we don't have a signed contract, and they go out and hurt themselves. Who's liable if they really hurt themselves? If we don't have a live contract that has all the indemnification and their health insurance, et cetera.
Well, if the board approves this evening, I mean, we have selected them, so I will double check with legal in the morning,
Yeah,
but
if
we've
you
done
could
this
just do
with
that.
other contractors too.
It's great.
in
No, if you
times
could do
past.
that, it'd be great. It's just
I'll give
that
him a call
window of
first thing in the
time.
morning.
It's just that one window of time if something
Sure.
happened.
I'll give
Thank
him a call
you.
first thing in the
Okay,
morning.
Thanks, sorry.
No, no apologies. No.
Okay.
I'm apologizing a lot tonight.
We had a motion and a second.
I'm ready to say aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.